Okay, we're live. Hopefully everyone can hear us all good. Give us a thumbs up if you can hear us all good.
Hello, everyone. Prepare to get mad.
I'm so mad.
Prepare to be so angry.
I am so angry.
I'm going to do my personal best not to lose my shit in its entirety through this process of explaining what's going on.
Audio's all good?
Nice.
Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up from peeps.
Oh, yeah, I got to open the comment section. Hey. Oops.
Awesome. Welcome, everyone. We're doing an emergency live stream because the government decided to give us 24 hours to campaign on a bill that was completely ambushed at us. I mean, we knew that it was coming. It's just that we didn't know that they were only going to give us 24 hours to deal with it.
24 hours to make a submission.
So I wanted to do a recap of everything that's happened today, and then we're gonna have Millie completely dissect every part of the bill meticulously, so that way there's an understanding of what's going on, and also some detail that may have been missed.
Yeah, so before we get into all of that, though, if you're watching, can you share the live stream? Because people need to know the straight up audacity of the events of the parliament the last couple of days. And we need to get everybody on the same page with this one, because we've only got till end of business tomorrow to make submissions against this. So we've got to be really quick with it. So if you could give the live stream a share wherever you're tuning in from, that would be really appreciated.
I feel like I've been throttled on Twitter lately.
Yeah, someone said that actually.
The amount of views, like I had like 7,000 people on this morning, but we're only on about 100. So if everyone that's on Twitter/X, if they could just give the live a retweet quickly. So hopefully we can get some more people in here.
I mean, it tends to pile in as we go anyway. Just goes up and up and up.
Yeah. Let's quickly do a recap anyway. So the first thing that happened this morning, if people that were with me this morning at like 7 a.m., we were all sitting there and watching the news as they were talking about the social media bill being presented, the social media minimum age bill being presented in the parliament. So I clipped the sort of important bit out of Michelle Rowland's 17-minute spiel in her first reading of the bill, and I want to go through that. So the social media minimum age bill has been tabled, has been introduced in the House of Representatives, and now it's slated to go to the Senate next week. So let's run that.
The Online Safety Amendment, Social Media Minimum Age Bill 2024, will amend the Online Safety Act 2021 by introducing a minimum age of 16 to have an account on age-restricted social media platforms, protecting young Australians at a critical stage of their development. The bill puts the onus on social media platforms, not parents or young people, to take reasonable steps to ensure fundamental protections are in place. This is about protecting young people, not punishing or isolating them, and letting parents know we're in their corner when it comes to supporting their children's health and well-being. We know establishing a minimum age for young people having social media accounts is not the only approach that needs to be taken, and we know that this measure will not be met with universal acceptance. But this is one step among many that a government should take in the protection and not the isolation of young people. There is wide acknowledgement that something must be done in the immediate term to help prevent young teens and children from being exposed to streams of content, unfiltered and infinite. It is the right thing to do, for the right reasons at the right time.
Yeah, so that was basically her spiel narrowed down from 17 minutes to a minute. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much just a bunch of lip service on that one. This is not anything we don't already know. Yeah, she's just using emotional justification to bring that forward. But it's more the time constraints that she's put on everyone. That's the issue. Being completely sneaky, but without directly saying that. So if you want to take everyone through the chronology of those events, I think it's a good place to be. And then we'll get to everyone losing their shit in the Senate, which was mwah.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to do now. So as she was introducing the bill in the House of Reps, the Senate had just opened up the chamber doors. And at the very beginning, after the Welcome to Country, of course, there were 5-minute speeches from our favorite senators. And what was to come was absolutely beautiful. The first and most just energizing speech was from Senator Hanson-Young, which was stunning even to me when I was hearing this. So Senator Hanson-Young from the Greens, the young global leader of the World Economic Forum, mind you, had went on a complete tear of the Liberal and Labor Party. I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to let everyone listen to this because it was spectacular.
Well, the stitch up is in, isn't it? The two big parties, desperate for distraction, desperate to get something done in this space so quickly before anybody looks at the detail, before they've worked out they've got no answers to the real questions. They want to smash this bill that kicks young people off the internet before Christmas. Smash it through the Parliament, a fake inquiry of only 5 days. Only 5 days. What a joke. Have the courage of your convictions to put forward legislation and to have it scrutinised properly. And why are they smashing this through so quickly? Why do they want anyone to look at the details and to ask the hard questions? Because their very own joint social media inquiry report handed down only on Monday this week didn't recommend this as a measure. In fact, it was the exact opposite. All of the experts have said that if you want to protect young people online, you have to make these platforms safer. You have to regulate them properly. You have to put in place guardrails. You have to work with parents to make sure their needs and their children's needs are being met. But you are desperate to get a distraction because nothing else is getting through this Parliament this fortnight. Your mis and disinformation bill is a bloody bin fire. That's what's going on. This is a distraction because you haven't even been able to run the argument on your own response to mis and disinformation. And so you ran this through as a big distraction. And it's not very often, I must say, that I agree with Senator Canavan. But on this particular issue, on social media, I agree that this should not be rammed through. This should not be put through with such a complex issue without proper review and proper scrutiny. But of course, we know what's going on here. The government's desperate for a distraction because of the mis and disinformation bill bin fire, and the opposition are split on the issue of social media. So Mr. Dutton wants this done as quickly as possible before anyone realises that he can't keep his own team in the tent. That is what is going on here. That is what's going on. And we're about to see it all over again on the next bill, and that's, of course, the electoral reform legislation, another stitch-up. When the two big parties decide to get together and ram stuff through in this place, you know they are failing the public debate. They're always failing the public debate when they want to ram stuff through, no real inquiry, no review, no scrutiny, because they've got no bloody answers.
And the reason why she was so upset, for those that may have missed it, is because just a couple of days ago, the report for this bill was actually handed in. And Hanson Young was a part of the senators that provided and issued the report. And she was very upset because, as it says here, the recommendation was not part of the report. The recommendation to say, hey, let's ban under 16-year-olds from social media was not a recommendation. And then 3 days later, come today, they've said, nah, screw the report, screw all the time and money and resources that we wasted on getting you guys to chair this committee. We're going to do it anyway. So for those that may have missed it, I'll just quickly run this because this gives real perfect clarity and context to why she was so upset today.
I don't know if it's meant to be playing, but we've still got Hanson Young on the screen. No audio.
My bad.
No, OG. OG.
There we go, guys. All right. So this is the part that I was talking about from yesterday. And by yesterday, I mean like 3 days ago.
In our final report, of course, a lot of the attention was given to social media itself and how we make these platforms safer and less harmful and better for members of the public and users alike. I want to point out very clearly here that the most interesting thing about this final report is what is not in the recommendations. And what is not in the recommendations is a blunt ban, age ban on social media. That's not what we recommended. That's not what the unanimous report from this inquiry recommended. What we did recommend was a whole raft of things that could be done to tighten the screws on the big tech companies, to improve their accountability, to make sure they are legally liable and responsible here on Australian soil, that they deal with the insidious, horrible nature of their data harvesting, selling it off to advertisers and supercharging algorithms, particularly how that relates to young people. It talks about the need for a levy or a tax on these big tech giants. But not one recommendation in this final report says a blunt ban on young people on social media is a good idea. And why? Because the experts, we listen to the experts, and the experts' view is it's not. The experts' view is that this isn't how you do it.
Yeah, so that was her spiel in a nutshell. After that,
I am
Jackie Lambie stepped up
This one was awesome.
and she had her say. So I'll play that.
I am terribly worried about this, as much as we all have good intentions. I haven't even seen a draft. How am I supposed to, over a weekend, get expert advice on this when you've given it 5 days? Oh, it's been tabled. Thank you. It must be so good. One dropped off at my office. Didn't even do that. There is a real issue here, and like through the chair, like Senator Hanson Young said, this is going to happen before Christmas. Seriously, you've had 2.5 years. We've known social media's been a big problem for a long time, and you really want to move this through this quickly? I really need to have expert advice on this over the weekend and a little bit further, because quite frankly, how do you expect people to respond in 5 days? This bill, no doubt, could be made better if we had more time to get it right. And 5 days? God almighty, what a joke this is in here today. What an absolute joke. How about we just get one thing right in here and we do it at 110% so it actually works? Why can't you do that? Oh, no, you want to have this big heading. Oh, we've done this for your under 16 kids. Well, I'll tell you what, Australians, it's probably not going to work, because when they run things like this through, you can guarantee it's got gaps bigger than your front teeth.
We have such a love-hate relationship with Lambie, but man, this morning that absolutely sent me. Hilarious, 10 out of 10. But you know, it's cooked. The Greens and the centre-right people on the crossbench are all getting along. That's how you know that both major parties are in the wrong here. I don't know how better to encapsulate the fact that this is a problem, because it almost never happens that we're all on the same page.
A lot of people kind of feel, and I've seen some comments, people saying that, you know, actions speak louder than words, and, you know, everyone probably has a price, and until the vote actually occurs, you know, it's all just lip service, which I somewhat agree. However, the fact that we were able to force testimonies and you know, basically in some form, it was like a confession of what they were going to do and how they felt about the misinformation bill. We've got it all on record now. If they go and say, vote yes next week, and completely deceive everyone after they've gone out and said that, you know, we can't hold a gun to their head and say, sorry, you know, we're going to have to punish you for it. But we've got all the ammunition that we need to make sure that they will lose their seat emphatically. So we have as much as we can as a bargaining chip, and we're just going to have to, you know, work with what we got. We really are only just working with the best possible outcomes and best possible resources that we can put and muster together. The next person, so there's a few more that had a bit of a tangent, was Malcolm Roberts. So let's quickly run that. It's just a minute. And the way that he introduces his speech was beautiful, because he had seen a whole bunch of other senators get upset, and then he was like,
well, isn't this a wonderful day? The Greens are normally helping the government to truncate debate, guillotine debate. Now they're talking about adding more time for debating. And we agree with them this time, because we agree with debate. Debate is the way to truth. And we agree with their amendment, and we will be supporting their amendment. This is a vital bill, an absolutely crucial bill that has serious consequences, and not just for people under 16 years of age. It has serious consequences on the Australian family, and who has the responsibilities over children in this absolutely crucial bill. It has serious consequences, and not just for people under 16 years of age. It has serious consequences on the Australian family, and who has the responsibilities over children in this country. Is it the government, or is it going to remain the parents? The parents have already had their responsibilities, their authorities whittled away at state and federal level. We need to enshrine responsibility for children with parents. That's critical. It's fundamental. This has important social and family consequences, this bill. And we've been given 1 hour. This is a stitch-up between the Labor, Liberal, Uni Party.
and one thing that Malcolm Roberts was able to inform us of as he was in the Senate this morning/afternoon was this. So the way that the motion that the Greens presented to try to postpone this bill from being voted on next week was voted down, and how it was voted down was very methodical. He goes that the Liberal Party and the National Senators had just abstained from being there, because I think from what I saw with the division numbers, they only lost by like 4 or 5 senators. It was a respectable margin comparison to like other divisions. But because the Liberal Party has outwardly supported it, they didn't turn up. They just hung out in the coffee break room. So it was, you know, they showed their true colors by not even being there. You know, I somewhat probably think, I don't know, maybe I'm just thinking off the top of my head, but maybe it would have been better if they at least showed their cards and actually went into the chamber and said that they wanted to vote yes for it or a vote against it, so that way it would be forced into a vote next week.
Why would they want to do that when the Liberal Party is literally banking on everyone's confusion right now to get away with this unscathed? That's what's pissing me off the most. Like, one thing I've noticed about this whole thing is that they are failing to really take accountability for their hand in this, but still at the same time trying to obtain the benefit. And like the audacity that only 3 of them showed up and then knocked down, that motion. Insane. It says a lot, because the most messed up part about this is the fact that they've only given the Australian people 24 hours to respond to legislation that's a piece of shit, respectfully. With all due respect, which is none, it's trash. And we only have 24 hours. The average person, the layman, has 24 hours to respond to something that impacts them. They're not in the parliament. You know, the average person doesn't quite understand what's written in there. Everything's really written quite confusingly on purpose. And you want to give people 24 hours to understand what the fuck is going on in their own country? It's a disgrace. And if the Liberal Party actually wanted to get on the right side of this in terms of the Australian people, you would have shown up and supported that motion to delay, because people obviously want to debate this and talk about it. Even people that sit on Jackie Lambie's side of the fence. Fair enough. Like, let's make sure we do it correctly. Okay, we can all get around that messaging. I don't like the content of it, but in terms of being thorough, yeah, I think we can all support that. Let's have a proper debate about it, and let's actually investigate what that pile of shit actually means for us in terms of putting it into practice. But no, they haven't done that. Tail between the legs, peace out. Labor and Liberal both want the same thing, which is to, use the back of this social media ban for their own personal promotions throughout the upcoming election. And it's a disgrace. I don't have any other way to describe it other than it's a fucking disgrace. And it's an insult to the intelligence of the Australian people as well, because we know exactly what the fuck you're doing. We really do. We know what you're doing when you delay this shit, when you squash debate, when you rush things, when you deliberately try to confuse people with shit legislation. And so if you want to go into an election year off the back of sneaky, deceptive shit, this is a really good way to ensure that nobody ever votes for you. And it's a really great way to ensure that all the stakeholders that disagree with you, of which there will be many, because again, there is no real protection in this in terms of people's right to privacy in the way of not utilizing things such as digital ID. That's not in there. It's a giant permission slip again for everyone's best mate, Julie Inman-Grant, in collaboration with Michelle Rowland, to make all the decisions about how these things are implemented in this country, when, to be quite honest, it should be a parliamentary process. So we know what you're doing. The fact that you didn't show up is fucking gutless at the bare minimum, and I know you're watching. So take that on board. It's gutless. People see what you're doing, and it is not a good show of leadership. So we're off to a strong start here, where the Liberal Party have, just by not showing up to allow proper debate over this legislation, just essentially told the Australian people that they can go and get stuffed. And by the way, here's 24 hours to complain about it. Anyway, and I'm trying not to lose it.
So next up on the stage was Renick, and he had a beautiful little spiel. He went hard at the Liberal Party because he's actually a former Liberal Party senator. So let's see what he had to say.
Senator Renick.
Madam President, and the great English-Irish philosopher Edmund Burke once warned about the tyranny of the majority. And that's what we're seeing here today, where we see the major parties are actually going to use their numbers to abuse due process.
The whole point of democracy is transparency and accountability. And if we run this inquiry in the next 5 days, throughout sitting days, I might add, when I dare say there's going to be a lot of other bills coming up, there is not enough time to scrutinise these two very important bills. The whole point of democracy was to empower the individual, and yet what we see here are the two major parties again seeking to abuse their numbers, to shut down transparency on what they intend to do. Let me tell you, the public, they've never had a great deal of trust for the politicians, but they are fed up to the back teeth with the entire process, the entire establishment. So I support this motion that all it's doing is asking to push out the date of the inquiry from next week, the closure of the inquiry from next week, which is completely unrealistic given that we're in sitting week anyway, to the second week of February next year, which will give us a couple of months over the Christmas break to actually have a greater look at these two very, very important acts. So I would ask that the major parties do the right thing by the people of Australia, do the right thing by democracy itself, and make sure that we can shine a light on this legislation.
Yeah, so Renick is very well spoken, and he's very just intricate with his words. It's beautiful to see. I sort of just cut in just the best bits, but he was the next on stage, and then the final person that I had quoted was everyone's favorite, Pauline Hanson. So she ripped into the uni party and gave them a bit of an education on their duties as government.
I love her tone when she's pissed off.
And that's why the misinformation, disinformation bill is all about control. Digital ID is about control. You only want them to see what you want them to see. You take the control out of the parents' hands. Parents should be the ones to decide. Not only that, social media, what about the kids who benefit from it? Which I believe is possibly the majority. But you want to take that away from them, what they can actually access. What about all the good things that they could be watching? And you want to take that away from them. This is not a nanny state. This is not communist bloody China. This is Australia. And this is what you're doing. You're shutting down parents' rights over their children constantly, day in, day out. And that has to stop. Stop pushing legislation, everything through in this parliament just because we're coming to the end of this sitting term. Don't do this to the Australian people. Give them the right to have their say. And the Albanese government said we're going to be open and honest and accountable. That's one thing that I've never seen in this parliament is accountability. It is just ridiculous. And I hope that people understand that. You're the worst government I've ever seen. And stop taking over control of the people and telling the people how they should run their lives. Governments were set up for three things: the economic stability of the country, the rule of the law, and the Constitution.
I love how she just like had to think about that for a second.
No, it's like, wait, why the fuck are we here?
It was
But
only
honestly,
like
you'd
at
ask the
9:30.
question.
It was only 9:30 a.m. and she was already sick of this.
Yeah, and fair enough. And honestly, what she said about accountability, and it intertwines into what I was saying last night about, there are all these benefits that kids actually have from social media, but nobody's talking about that. And then we're also talking about a government that basically kicked kids in the direction of social media because it was convenient for them throughout all the COVID bullshit. And so kids have developed a bit of a dependency on social media. It may not actually be a negative thing for these kids to be talking to their friends and to have all these sorts of technologically savvy ways of educating themselves, which, for the most part, I've seen to be quite a thing where they're looking at different hobbies and all these sorts of TikToks and things where they get to learn a new skill. That's what the kids are doing. So, it's just completely intellectually dishonest to what's actually going on. with families. People don't need Michelle Rowland to swoop in and save them from their own children. And if they do, well, that's unfortunate that you've got kids that don't listen, but let us please provide some educational resources and some extra support somewhere else that doesn't involve banning everyone's children from social media. Completely disproportionate.
So one thing that I thought that was quite stunning, but expected, was the fact that after Michelle Rowland had gone through her first reading of the bill, and then she was asked a question about the benefits of the bill during question time, on indulgence, the opposition to Michelle Rowland, Shadow Communications Minister David Coleman, had said that he will support the bill, and he had some beautiful remarks to say.
On indulgence, the member banks will have the call to support what the minister was saying.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the remarks of the Minister for Communications. This issue of the safety of Australian children online from social media is one of the defining issues of our era. It is of totemic significance in our community. And what we've seen in recent years in the impact on the mental health of Australian children from social media has been absolutely appalling. The social media companies for too long have abrogated their responsibility. We welcome this legislation being put forward. The Leader of the Opposition committed the Coalition to a very similar policy back in June, and we look forward to working constructively on this legislation with a view to seeing it pass through the Parliament next week.
So everyone's going to get the Christmas present of digital ID for Christmas.
You know what I think is really funny? On an unrelated note, he said it was of Titanic level significance. And I put up a meme today that said, we're the band going down on the Titanic, aren't we? And I did not make the connection between the two things. But it's literally like that. You know, we're holding out a bit of hope, trying to lift everyone's spirits while the ship is absolutely sinking. And also, why would you even say that? Titanic level significance, bro. No one is going to draw a positive conclusion from that metaphor whatsoever.
I don't know who's pulling the strings here, but someone must have put that word in his mouth. All right,
the
so that's
staffers just taking the piss. Is that what's happening? They're just communicating how they feel about it through subtle ways in their little speeches. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. That was not by accident. That was by design. We all know that. So the next thing that happened after everyone had their bit of a tangent today, and the bill was presented into House of Reps, was the 11th hour call to action. I actually first saw it through Pauline Hanson, so thank you to Pauline Hanson, where the bill was opened for submissions, public submissions. However, unlike the misinformation bill where they gave us an awesome amount of time of 7 days, they thought, screw everybody, you get 24 hours. So they opened up submissions, which are due to close at close of business tomorrow. So if anyone's wondering the end time, it's approximately 5 p.m. tomorrow, close of business. And I can probably give you a bit more of a definitive time based on what the times are for tomorrow in the Senate or in Parliament. So I'll see if I can find that just quickly. But yeah, it's just assume it's probably going to be about 5 p.m. So what we've been doing over the last, what is it now, 5-6 hours, is just trying to encourage everyone to make submissions. So if anyone that's watching that hasn't made a submission yet, I know everyone is so drained. I'm drained. Everyone's drained. But we need to do everything that we can with regards to what they give us. And then once every single position that they give us has been completely exhausted. Trust me on this. Wallah, you have my word. We are going to
Bringing out the
go to
wallah.
some other lengths. Okay, wallah, we are. I promise. I'm so upset. It's starting to bring out the inner Lebanese in me. I'm born in Australia, though. So we've got until tomorrow. So if you want to make a submission, this is the website. I've linked it below in the description of YouTube, and it's also posted on my Twitter page. Make a submission, and if you want some advice on how to do it, I'll quickly run through it, because I know I've been getting a lot of questions from people saying, how do I do it? So if this lets me log in instead of creating an account, I will do unlock submission. Okay, here we go. So Online Safety Amendment, Minimum Age Bill 2024. So you have to have an account. I know it's annoying, but we all got to suck it up. And then let me just make sure there's no personal information on here. Yeah, no, it's fine. All right. So here you go to make a submission. You just put in your details. So click on personal. If you represent an organization, click organization. Put in your details here. Click next and just follow the prompts. Follow the prompts to make a submission. Now, two things on the submission. If you need help with making a submission, go to our website, australiansversustheagenda.com. It's on the bottom of the template of our stream. Click on the link where it says social media ban at the top here. And just below these steps, I've drafted a template that I used here. So you can sort of copy paste it and then just customize it to your liking, and then go back to the submission page and just send it through there. But we have until close of business tomorrow. So start getting those submissions in ASAP. Now, after that happened, of all people, Mr. Elon Musk chimed in. So Anthony Albanese went on to brag about it and said, today we're introducing our bill to make 16 years the minimum age for social media. And lo and behold, Elon Musk, who has been in lots of court disputes against the E-Safety Commissioner and against the Australian government with regards to social media and the legalities regarding it, has chimed in. And he said, it seems like it's a backdoor way to control access to the internet. I think he mistyped this, but the sentiment is there, to the internet for all Australians. So Elon Musk has chimed in, and that's instantly made this a global story. Over 5.5 million views and several thousand comments, not just from the known faces from Australia, but a lot of high-profile personalities. Michael Schellenberger, he's in Canberra at the moment, have chimed in.
Yeah, if you're just tuning in now, if you could give the live stream a share, because our account is obviously facing a few penalties just because we're spreading so much truth. It's not reaching quite as many people as we'd probably like it to, but given how important this bill is, it's probably a good idea to share this so that we can all get on the same page. And honestly, I'm tired of this. Like, I'll preface it by saying I'm tired of my own voice. I'm tired of having to have a reaction to all of this bullshit. I'm tired, but on the same token, I'm happy to be able to explain it to people. And so if you can just summon, enough fucks to give within yourself.
I knew that was
create
coming.
a submission. I don't have another word for it. It's gotta be worded in an organic way, because I don't have it in me to even self-censor. and will be so censored I might not even be able to be myself for very much longer on this fucking internet. So I may as well just say it how I feel. Yeah. We need to start making submissions, but if you want to understand what to say in the submissions, I'm happy to go through the bill. Also, Anthony, I sent you just a copy of the bill to your email, but with my highlights. And not that my highlights are super relevant, but it jogs things in my mind as we go through it. And it might be educational for people at home. So like when I'm reading something, I'll just flag certain things and it'll just pique my interest. And then, you know, go forth from there and understand like what is meant and all these sorts of things like within the bill. So look, it's a short bill. So that's good in the sense that it didn't take too long to go through it. It's bad in the sense that there's a lot of shit that should be in there that is not in there for a broad ban of, you know, under 16s on social media. You would expect a lot more detail in terms of what's what. So, all right,
everyone that's on Twitter, we've finally reached over 1,000 viewers. I had 7,500 people on this morning at 7 a.m. So we are definitely shadow banned. If everyone on Twitter could please retweet the live stream, it's on 31 retweets. Can we please try to get that to 100 retweets? Because we are now going to start recapping and start hitting the bill. We've done a recap of the events that happened today and touched on a few things that happened throughout the week. Now we are really going to get into the meat of this bill. So everyone on Twitter, please go to the stream and just quickly give it a retweet so we can reach as many people as possible, because this is now the important part.
Yeah. So basically, like before we get in the nitty-gritty, the overall purpose of the bill is structured around, again, much like the misinformation, it's not about us as individuals so much as it's empowering certain people to be able to make decisions and have a whole lot of discretion with how this is implemented. So, you know, the people that are empowered by this legislation are Michelle Rowland, the Communications Minister, in absolute lockstep with the e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant. So that's what we're seeing here. Now, I'll preface this by saying it's not often, but it's a common theme when they're trying to put legislation through that they know people won't be happy with if they understand it, to bury the meaning of things and to be quite vague. You know, even the e-safety commissioner isn't mentioned as the e-safety commissioner in the main legislation, but she's labelled as being the minister in question or the commissioner in question in the explanatory memorandum. So it's just another way of burying the onus of what this looks like in terms of practice, is the way that I would put it. So straight away, that was a red flag to me, where I'm like, okay, cool. So we're just going to bury the accountability factors, this whole thing. So look, and I've just highlighted little bits that I just deemed relevant along the way. So we'll just unpack it. Yeah, but basically, look, it starts off by rewording the Online Safety Act to just include the age-restricted media platforms. So there's that. The biggest, most standout theme for this entire bill, and the reason why it's a threat to us for two major reasons. One, there is no explanation within this bill. It's 17 pages. There's no explanation of what a reasonable step to ensure age verification is. We don't know what that is. So not only have they said that all of these platforms need to ensure that they've taken reasonable steps to verify people's age, they have not thought to stipulate how that's going to happen. Why? Because how logically are you going to do it without some form of online digital ID? Whether that's a third-party application, we don't know, but it would have been maybe easier for them to stipulate that rather than just leaving this big question mark in the legislation so that we have to put 2 and 2 together on how the fuck they're going to implement this. Excuse my French, but reading this, that's the sort of stuff that makes me angry, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, okay, I see exactly where this is going. So yeah, there's no understanding for us on the other side of this of what a reasonable step is to verify people's identity on social media platforms. So if you're writing a submission, that's probably the primary issue. But secondary to that, and they've buried it as best they can by just citing different sections of things like the Online Safety Act where they've amended it. But basically what they're saying is, and let me just get down to it. So if you go to page 8, it's just the main amendments, right? Right there. No, you've gone too far. You're on 12. So scooch her up to page 8. Yeah. So look, 27(1)(q), and like they've done it in a way where they've just listed all the bits that they're amending without fucking saying it in the bill, which part they're amending and how that works. But basically, it puts Inman-Grant as the e-safety commissioner in charge of reasonable steps. So the e-safety commissioner, the one that, you know, objectively speaking, has a personal relationship with Elon Musk, or at least a professional one that went terribly bad, is in charge of the reasonable steps for everyone to verify their identity. And again, at no point have they gone to say how they plan to do that, because the biggest question that we have as the Australian people is, how the actual fuck would you implement something like that and do it efficiently, effectively, and whilst protecting everyone's privacy? So yeah, it's very subtle in the way that it links the relationship between the communications minister and the e-safety commissioner. And it's written like that to try and minimize the public reaction as much as possible. But that's what they're saying. So we scroll down. Let me just find the next relevant part. Right, so it's similar to the misinformation bill, in the way that the communications minister has the ability to determine like what is an age restricted social media service, and you know, similarly she can exempt things as well. But if we go to page 10, it stipulates, basically, just making sure it marries up on your screen so it doesn't mind. Okay, cool. You know, the minister must seek advice from the commissioner and must have regard to that advice. And the minister may seek advice from any other authorities or agencies of the Commonwealth that minister considers relevant and may have regard to any such advice. So it's just reiterating the relationship there between the communications minister and the e-safety commissioner. So all these decisions that they're making in terms of whether or not a service is exempt or a platform is considered, you know, to need age restriction for their users, it's in consultation with those two. The buck stops at those two, and that's the problem. So I'm not really seeing a whole lot of avenues here for wiggle room for, say, the rest of the parliament to have a mechanism to question some of that. I mean, who knows what sort of decisions that these two could independently make. And, you know, the other thing is, and again, it's not a personal thing about Julie Inman-Grant. I don't know her. She could be a nice lady. I don't care. But she's an unelected bureaucrat. That's a simple, and I know we throw that word around a lot, but she is not elected. And yet she has the ability to influence this country, in particular in regard to things like freedom of political expression. And she can do that from a position, you know, afforded to her by the parliament, but whilst not being part of the parliament. You know, she's a dual citizen. She came up in Twitter. And obviously the falling out with Elon Musk. It's not insignificant the way.
I'm going to cut you off there. She has a
do
CIA background. Everyone should know that. If anyone doesn't know that, she has a CIA background. She's working for the deep state, and I'm telling you, she's evil. She's not a good person.
Can we verify that though? Like, have we, like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, verified that one?
Everyone on YouTube, all 100 plus of you, thumbs up if she's CIA. I'm not making that up. She auditioned for the CIA.
It's not uncommon, I would say, for people in those positions to have a background of that nature. Is everyone sort of following this? Like, I'm exhausted. I don't even know if it makes sense half the bloody time, because things make sense to me, but I don't know if they make sense to other people. But basically, so far, they're just very sneakily creating and stating that relationship of authority between the Communications Minister and the E-Safety Commissioner, right? Both of them are hand in hand. They've empowered the E-Safety Commissioner without directly saying, you know, the E-Safety Commissioner gets to decide what is a reasonable, what's the fucking word they use? Reasonable, not measure.
Don't worry about it.
Whatever, right? What is a reasonable fucking attempt or whatever to verify people's IDs? Reasonable steps, that's the one, right? So hand in hand, they get to determine what a reasonable step is. I'm not seeing how they would do this outside of digital ID. When we talk about our previous live stream where we covered Bill Shorten's demonstration of, was it TEX? Was it TEX? Was that the acronym?
Yeah, trusted exchange. I just want to say here, Career Mail 2018, Australia's top cyber watchdog has revealed she was almost a spy for the CIA, but the insane job restrictions turned her off accepting the gig. Job restrictions?
So she's technically not.
I said she auditioned for it, so she did interview. That's why she was almost a spy.
Okay, but being try-hard CIA isn't the same as being CIA. So I'm glad I pulled us up on that.
Nah, I said she auditioned for it. An interview is also a synonym for audition.
Yeah.
So where are we on this bill?
Yeah. I'm formulating that. Right. Mind you, I only got onto this like an hour or two before the live stream, by the way.
Yeah, well, everyone knows that we all got onto this over the last just little bit because they just dropped it on us.
And it's not that anything that I'm saying is wrong. It's that when you have a limited amount of time to get your head around this, to explain it to other people, it's difficult to do that in a short period of time because it's by design there to confuse everyone. You know, whether you're somewhat intermediate with legislation, you'll find that you have to read something over and over again to make sure there's no little sneaky tidbits that you missed because of the way that they write it. So, you know, no one's an idiot for not being able to understand this. It's like I said, you know, in our original sort of live streams on this, I don't want people to shy away from making an attempt to understand legislation or to think that they're stupid because they can't understand all this tricky shit that people do in government. Because it's by design, it's there to be hard to make us less informed about what they're putting through the parliament. And, you know, nobody can tell me otherwise. Otherwise, the explanatory memorandums would not be so packed, filled with waffle that means nothing. They would explain it to people in a way that makes sense to them if the intention was for people to actually know what's going on. But no, we get all these emotional spiels about helping parents and a very niche market of parents and limited consultation with experts, you know, all these different things. But there's no accountability to the people. So, chronological order. We're up to there. Right, so, I mean, they've amended the civil penalty units, which is, you know, insignificant to us because it applies to the social media platforms, but it just means that the penalty for non-compliance is significantly higher. So I'm on page 11 right now. So I've just like scrolled down and they've reiterated, you know, the obligations apply, you know, on the day of royal assent, basically. So as soon as this is passed and assented is when this probably clean sweep of under 16s would likely be expected to be removed, which is a little weird when you think about it, because they probably need their own sort of algorithm to actually flag and remove those accounts anyway. And so it's kind of unclear how they're supposed to comply with this as of yet as well, which, you know, it's not as significant to us, but in terms of putting that burden onto social media platforms, you know, how the fuck are they going to do that quickly with very limited notice? We, the people, have barely gotten any notice, and then they're supposed to be able to do that. And then further to that, how are they going to quickly implement a ID process to verify who we are? So when you sort of put 2 and 2 together, the fact that they're rushing this in, it's expected that there is instant compliance. You know, it wouldn't surprise me if an avenue toward justifying a form of digital ID would be to say, well, hey, we've got to do this quickly, so this is probably the most efficient way for us to do it. And again, there's no protections afforded to the people through this, right? We don't know if, you know, Julie Inman-Grant will turn around and say, oh, we need another third-party ID verification that's separate from the government and separate from social media, that goes to an external verification process so that people can retain their accounts. We don't know that she's going to say that, but, you know, who is she to be able to make that decision? That's insane. You know, people, I believe, have a right to, you know, figure out how to verify who they are in attempted compliance with this new law without compromising their values online and without having to jump onto a digital service that they haven't consented to. You know, we don't consent to this shit. But the only reason, again, that they can get away with it is because it's a service. We sign up to terms and conditions in order to be part of the service. So whatever they want to do in terms of regulating the service, we as the consumers can basically get stuffed because the protections aren't there from a people perspective. And that's how it's sort of all taking place. So if we go down to Division 3, privacy on page 11. Right. So basically they've put a bit of detail in to the fact that these entities, as in the social media companies, can't retain people's data. So that's good. But then on the same token, and this is where the two kind of intersect, I'll just make sure I haven't missed anything here before we scroll down to it. Right. Right. So, I mean, even 63F1B down there, part of this is that the companies are required to disclose information to prove that they're compliant, which is where this gets tricky, because they're not definitively saying that these companies have to hand over their IDs, but they're not saying they don't have to hand over our IDs, right? So there's a grey area here that I think is a huge red flag, where nobody's quite saying whether or not the Australian government has access to our identification married up with account ownership. And that's something that I flagged as an issue in the misinformation bill, because under the exceptions, you know, the information that ACMA wasn't allowed to retain, it was only the voice calls and direct messages that they weren't able to obtain from social media companies for investigative purposes or otherwise. And then one of the criteria for whether or not something somebody was spreading was misinformation was the identity of an individual, right? So when you think about all these things married up together, it looks to me like the government wants to be able to assign our identities definitively married up with our account ownership. And I don't need to explain why they would want to do that. It's, to me, obvious. The amount of information that it gives them about us, what it does in the way of giving them an easy way to watch or ban or regulate content from certain users that they've deemed to be problematic to them. There's so many ways that just the simple marrying up of our account data with our identity is set to be a huge problem. And there's no greater violation of privacy. And, you know, where it says that the social media companies, the entity, must destroy the information after using it for those purposes, you know, further down, so page 13, Division 4, information gathering powers. So in terms of making sure that these companies are compliant and, you know, the commissioner believes on reasonable grounds that a person is a provider of an age-restricted social media platform. You know, they're able to request information by written notice, right? And again, there's penalty units for not complying with that notice. But it's not so much that it definitively says that they're going to come in and marry up our identification with accounts and have access to that back-end data. It's the fact that it doesn't say that they don't. And the reason why this bill is a piece of shit is because it is so ambiguous in terms of who has access to what, who decides what, and under what scope did they decide it, apart from having the title of E-Safety Commissioner and Minister for Communications. What scope of consideration do they have? Not a lot. Like, they say that they'll consider our privacy and all this bullshit, but I would not for 1 second take anyone's word on that. So you can see why this is a problem. And, you know, the penalty units are next to irrelevant to us. But when you look at social media companies, I'm pretty sure the penalty units are scaled based on their income as a company, or it may equate to an actual financial value. I guess it depends on the section. I don't know if you've got that information, Anthony, because it's not relevant to us, so I didn't really cross-check it too much, other than the fact that not complying is going to be detrimental to any given company that chooses not to for any reason, but they have no reason not to comply.
I think what is going to happen if it gets that far is that, like, use Twitter X as an example. They'll submit a written notice saying, hey, you need to do X, Y, Z. Elon Musk is probably going to say, nah, get stuffed. E-Safety Commissioner or Communications Minister is going to turn around and say, all right, we're going to fine you. And then Elon Musk is going to go say, go get stuffed. They're going to take it to court like they've done with the federal court proceedings a couple of months ago. They'll contest it. Elon Musk seems to have the best lawyers in the world and all the money in the world to be able to resource and litigate this to the end of the world. 99.9% chance he'll win, and then the case will be closed. I think this might be an attempt for them to try to, like, close that gap between.
Yeah, it definitely is. So the way that it is now, they have no ability to restrict people like Elon in terms of their rights based overseas at a company level, right? All of their obligations are region-based. So I can't think of a country that's, like America would be one, where they don't really have all these obligations to the government, right? There are protections in place that ensure that people can have their freedom of communication. But then also on the flip side of that, the social media companies are doing their own little dodgy stuff in the background, but that has nothing to do with people's individual rights. So putting this into an official law is what then creates the capacity for, you know, at an international level, for them to be able to say, hey, you have to comply with this in this region. We're not saying that you have to do it anywhere other than Australia. But in terms of operating on Australian soil, you must comply with these regulations. And failure to do that will result in financial penalties. Worst case scenario, look, maybe he'll just tell everyone to get stuffed and stop operating in Australia. But again, I doubt that because of revenue. But the fact that they can attack his revenue via legislation like this is a huge disincentive for anyone to really go up against it.
No, so
And-
what will happen is just exactly like what happened with Facebook a couple of years ago. They had a dispute with their news marketing agreement, and then Facebook went offline for like, what, a week? Everyone was wondering, what the hell are we going to do, because we can't use Facebook. The journalists especially were upset because that was like a part of their job profile. And then, you know, a week, two later, the government came to a deal with Meta, and then they fixed it all up. The same thing's going to happen with this. If this goes through,
Yeah.
they're going to say, hey, Elon, cough up XYZ, or hey, Elon, you got to comply with this. Otherwise, you're going to go to court and we're going to fine you for $50 million of your revenue. Elon's just going to pull the plug on Twitter and being in Australia. All of a sudden, don't worry about the users. The government is going to be cut off from Twitter. And these bastards, like, they more than anything, they care about their social media profiles. They're trying to ban kids under 16 from using social media. You know how like egotistic these maniacs are? You watch House of Reps, all right, and you actually like don't focus on the people, the person that's speaking. Focus on the actual members of parliament on their chairs. 99% of them are on their phones staring at their screen. And all they're doing is looking at their Twitter feed, just thinking and just enjoying how much of a celebrity they are with their little gray tick or the little blue tick, and they've got hundreds of thousands of followers, and they know that they can always push out a message. It's all about their ego. They lap this shit up.
And if I were Elon Musk, I would have deleted all their fucking accounts the very second they started throwing Inman-Grant in my face. But I suspect the reason they haven't done that is because at a constitutional level, we have an implied freedom of political communication. Implied. But then all of our election legislation is very clear on election interference. And so I probably wouldn't be looking to kick the hive in terms of what constitutes interfering with our electoral process. And I think deleting politicians probably qualifies under that. I'm pretty sure that's more jail time rather than a civil sort of issue. So yeah, I can see why you can't entirely just be petty in these circumstances.
Nah, honestly, Elon, I know you're watching. Can you please delete all of the Australian government profiles like right now? Just press that giant red button and just delete all their accounts. Screw them.
Or at least his people are watching anyway. Yeah, legends for resharing all the stuff that's happening down here, because fucking wow. If we didn't have the assist from our international friends, wow, this would be so much more difficult to get the word out. But anyway, just to like round this shit off. So if you go to page 15, just down the bottom, 239B. So this is the other thing I have a fucking issue with. Similar to the misinformation bill, except they dressed it up really fancy in that legislation to have a triannular review. So 3 years after implementing that pile of shit, they planned on launching a review into, you know, its efficacy. But with this, it's a similar thing. Within 2 years after it takes effect is when they would expect to review it. And it must be an independent review that goes through the parliament. But again, no protections for the people. If you're going to implement an under 16 ban, that's a pretty serious thing to do. And it's a pretty serious thing to do with no fucking preparation for how you're going to do it and nothing in writing about how you're going to do it. But no, we the Australian people can go and get stuffed, and they'll just review it when they feel like it within the 2 years after they make decisions that really piss us off as a collective, is what I'm hearing. So, you know, from the ground up, this bill really is, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it, it's a fucking permission slip to implement whatever bullshit in the way that they feel like doing it. And the reason why they've dressed it up in this way is very clearly to avoid scrutiny from everyone who reads it, right? Going into an election year, make it as hard to explain as possible what's happening so that hopefully people are too lazy to cross-check what it means in the Online Safety Act or the Privacy Act or whatever, whichever bit of fucking legislation that's not on the paper they've directed you to make sense of what's on this paper. They're relying on people's laziness, on the fact that they don't have, the legal nuance understanding to be able to understand what the fuck they're looking at in a way that makes sense. And honestly, it's overwhelming, because if you don't know anything about the terminology in these pieces of shit, you wouldn't know how to read it. And that's where, Anthony and I come in, and, occasionally some of our actual politicians will be bothered explaining what's in the legislation for us, but it's few and far between. And I honestly think that this particular gap of education is what is making it hard for Australia as a collective to quite grasp the audacity of these motherfuckers. And again, I'm sorry, I'm not self-censoring, because this has been a full-on 2-week period of just gut punch after gut punch to the people. And I don't know how else to explain it other than just being true to myself in how much this shit pisses me off. Because it's an insult to our intelligence. It is disrespectful to give us 24 hours notice to respond to this piece of trash. It is even more disrespectful to leave it till end of business on a Friday. So hopefully over the weekend, people can forget that we're supposed to give a shit about this, right? So they can then attempt to force it through, probably likely in the same sitting day. And what was it? Monday, Tuesday, that they were going to plan on doing this? Anthony? Damn, not even listening to me.
Sorry, I forgot to post this video because so many other things were happening. But everyone, I'm gonna show you where this frame just stopped, because I think everyone deserves a laugh.
Yeah, please.
Miss Stegel, the cooked face on that freeze frame, the teal. So I screen recorded this, but I didn't post it because I got so caught up with everything else that was going on. But she had said something that was of note, and I don't think this is going to help stop it, but I think it might at least be a bit of another hurdle that they're going to throw up. So it's not from Zoe Stegel. It's from, what's her name? Is it Stegel? Which one is it? Zali Stegel, and then there's Zoe Daniel. Zali Stegel says Zoe Daniel is going to bring up a private members bill. So I'll see. Let me know if the audio comes clear from my phone. I don't know if it will, but hopefully it does.
But I am not convinced this is this actually is a fit for purpose in this day and age, that banning it to 16-year-olds is appropriate. And then there's the inconsistency of we hold 10-year-olds criminally responsible, but we're saying a 16-year-old can't access media.
They should scrap the ban altogether. There's better ways to go after the tech platforms to actually make the platforms safer.
In fact, the member for Goldstein, Zoe Daniel, will be tabling a private members bill on Monday that very much addresses that point, that has the support of many organisations who have all come together to say the ban is not the answer, that this is the answer around a very explicit duty of care and accessing the algorithm and making the platforms responsible for the harm they cause, and so engaging with it in that way.
I don't know if he meant to put that on the screen, but it wasn't on the screen, but we got the audio. So, yeah. I mean, even the Teals, the most irrelevant whisper in the wind of a term of fucking parliament, have something to say about this. And that's a recycled concept, you know. All the lefties are examining the proportionality of the fact that you can put a 10-year-old in prison, but they can't be on social media. It's ridiculous. The whole thing is so ridiculous that it's hard to even react to in a way that seems appropriate. All I feel is seething rage with the fact that they, again, have the audacity to throw this in our faces. And, you know, it's the reason why I'm so angry with the coalition is because they didn't even show up to make their stance known in terms of delaying this bill. And I guess absence speaks louder than words right now. But they obviously don't disagree with this piece of shit timeline that we've been given to respond to this legislation. Because otherwise, if they did, they would have showed up and said, no, hang on, let's do it properly. And if you were going to actually do this in a way that was, palatable to the public, you would have said, hey, let's slow it down and just make sure everybody's happy with it before we put it through. But no, you want to force it through before the end of the year because you might have a new class in session next time who might not be so tolerant of what you're trying to achieve. And it's hard to go into an election off the back of a question mark surrounding a social media ban rather than something that you've gone and implemented. And then, hey, maybe Albanese will fuck up how to implement it and you can maybe go off the back of criticizing that even though you also voted for it, which is probably the playbook. Seriously, sort it out because nobody wants this. And the best thing you can do, if you're an MP in the Liberal Party right now and you quietly think this is absolutely ridiculous, I think the best thing you can do is try to get it through Dutton's head or anyone else that's driving this fucking ship into the ground, Titanic style, anyone else who's on the fucking Titanic right now, if you can just drive it into their heads that this is not an election winner for so many reasons. But if they put this legislation through, and I can only speak for myself and probably Anthony, if they put this legislation through without removing the power from the E-Safety Commissioner and Michelle Rowland and putting it back in the Parliament, and if they put this through without concretely saying that digital ID will not be a mandatory part of this legislation, of this ban, and if they can't shorten the review process and ensure beyond a shadow of a fucking doubt that our IDs will not be married up with account ownership, I, and at least everyone else who's equally as pissed off about this, will drag you to the point of no return when it comes to this election cycle. I will then make it my mission in life. If I have to stand on a fucking intersection because I don't want to use digital ID to be on a bloody platform, I will still make it my mission in life to ensure that nobody votes for you motherfuckers. Seriously, you cannot do this to people. It is disrespectful at the highest level. It's disrespectful to our intelligence, to our autonomy, and to rush it through like a thief in the night. Are you fucking kidding me? Who would vote for a government that has the audacity to do that? And that's how I feel. So honestly, I would print this legislation and wipe my ass with it on camera if I wasn't sure that it would be porous to the touch. I honestly would. That's how pissed off I am about this.
Nah, we're not going to do that.
No, we're not going to do that because whatever. But it's trash. It belongs in the bin. It's as much of a bin fire as the misinformation bill, as Sarah Hanson-Young said. Nobody is happy about this. And you should pull up that Crikey article while we're at it as well.
Yeah, but before we do that, I want to do something. I want to do something that no one else has probably done. This is going to be an Australia First exclusive. So everyone that's watching on Twitter, especially, all 1,400 of you guys, do something that no one else has probably. Whoops. Let's turn the volume down of that. All right, so everyone on Twitter, 1.4K, can you quickly just give this retweet? Give the stream a retweet. It's on 57 retweets. So if everyone could just quickly click out and then just retweet the stream, I'd really appreciate this because this is going to be in Australia First. So I know you clowns are watching. So I'm going to do this so you guys can really get the freaking message. To Paul Fletcher, the Honourable Paul Fletcher, to Mr. Julian Lisa, the local MPs of my area, to the local senators in New South Wales of my area, the Honourable Tim Ayres, Andrew Bragg, Ross Cadell, I know you're watching, Miss Davey, Maureen Faruqi, everyone's favourite senator, Holly Hughes, Maria Kovacic, Millie's favourite senator, Jenny McAllister, Deborah O'Neill, Dave Sharma, Tony Sheldon, and David Shoebridge. Not only am I going to submit, I'm going to just read it to your face in front of 1,600 people. I'm deeply concerned about the social media minimum age bill 2024, and I urge you to reconsider your stance. Here are some crucial points of concern. There is a lack of detail on the verification. The government has not specified how identity and age verification will be conducted for users over and under, for that matter, raising questions about privacy and data security. Premature legislation. You are pushing this bill through without full disclosure of its mechanisms, suggesting a lack of thorough consideration of potential future amendments and complications. Undermining parental rights. Now, I can't speak for myself because I'm not a parent. However, this bill, from what I've been told from all the senators and all the members of parliament that I've spoken to, this bill will override their parental discretion and responsibilities in managing their child's online presence. Malcolm Roberts actually touched on this really well during one of his speeches today in the Senate. Privacy risks. Age verification could lead to increased data collection with significant privacy implications and social isolation, so affecting the teenagers' ability to interact with other friends, family, and reach out to support networks. Now, my favorite part of this letter, and the reason why I'm addressing it specifically to these clowns and these clowns, is because unlike a lot of people who are so busy just working 9 to 5, trying to make ends meet, just slugging away, if you support this bill, I will campaign to make sure that you lose your seat, whether it be at the upcoming election or the next one. I will make sure that you lose your seat. And I will try to reach as many people as possible in the local area to make that promise come true. I swear to God, you support it, you're going down.
Capacity to hurt them on the campaign level, but we do. We really do. And we've done it through various other campaigns. You know, we've already knocked down most of the safe seats into marginal ones. They don't understand that when people are pissed off enough, we can make these miracles happen, like getting you out of your perceived safe seat. It's not that hard. And when I tell you that we're keeping receipts of every single thing you've done or not done, because abstaining from voting is just as bad as blocking decent motions. So before we get into this article, I think that the most honourable thing that the Liberal Party can do right now is admit that they're wrong in their assessment about this, that they spoke at length to the community, that they listened to people who called them and told them that, hey, I've got a really difficult teenager with mental health issues that's actually quite dependent on her social media for her well-being, or my son's really social and you'll be taking that away from him and it will affect his well-being. Actually listening to parents and thinking about the fact that not every kid needs a social media ban, and admitting that, you know, banning people from things is not the best way forward because you respect Australian parents, that would win our respect as the Australian people. Being able to admit that your original position has now evolved because you're listening to us would do a world of fucking wonders for the PR problem that keeps on giving, which is indecision, lack of accountability, and a lack of cohesion within the party. We've got all these jokers within there doing whatever they feel like. And at the 11th hour, no consequences, even if it defies Liberal Party principles. You know, but these are not beyond reprieve. Like, this is an unlosable election. And again, here we are. How is this happening? Pull the bill. It's trash. Pull it. You're not going to have an easy time defending this bill. shoe on the other foot. I've done the devil's advocate here. I don't have a solution to defend this bill other than the dumb shit that you were doing in the original stages of the e-safety commissioner discussion by saying that Jules is a good person and a great colleague and a consummate professional. Okay, she's still an unelected bureaucrat, and the parliament should be making decisions about what happens with the Australian people, not a fucking commissioner, okay? We're smart enough to see through that as the Australian people, and it's time that the major parties start cottoning onto that, okay? Because we're sick of the lip service. All of these bullshit excuses that you give aren't applying anymore. People are more pissed off, or probably almost as pissed off, maybe equal to or greater than when all the fucking lockdowns were happening. You can't mess with freedom of political expression, freedom of speech, and what people do with their children. It's not landing with the public.
They really had the audacity to try to do this after, like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, when the COVID report came out, and the most pronounced part of it was that the lack of community trust in government was like the highlight of the entire report.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, telling Australian parents that you don't trust them is a surefire way to get them to not vote for you. Every decision that's being made is not a vote winner right now. And if I can't appeal to you on fucking common sense, please think about your mortality in the political space. Please. Like Barnaby was saying to the Labor Party, can I appeal to the fact that we'll mop the floor with you if you support the misinformation bill and drag it through the election because we'll repeal it? Well, okay. Same thing for the Australian people. If you put this socials ban through, if you give all this power to the e-safety commissioner and Michelle Rowland, if you give the government access to our IDs in relation to account ownership, if you do all of these things, we will not vote for you. It's that simple. And you think it's hard for us to do recurrent educational campaigns to tell people what this pile of shit legislation means? It's not hard. And if you make us do it that way, we will. Because what's written there cannot stand on its own merit. Please understand, it is not hard for us to drag you in the 6 months' time until the next election. Fuck. Anyway, let's see what Crikey's up to. I can't hear you, mic's muted.
This is the article. I haven't read it, but I'm pretty sure you said that you've read it. People are complaining that you're using swearing.
Well, sorry, I'm not censoring myself anymore. I spent a long time. No, I tell you what, I spent a long time, liaising with a lot of these people in government and trying to get outcomes for the people. And it's only relatively recently that I've come to the conclusion that absolutely nobody cares, and it doesn't matter what I do. And whether I be myself after a week and a half of 2 weeks of just seeing what they're doing to the Australian public, if I be myself and I'm a little loose on the language, I don't think I really care.
Yeah, everyone that's watching that's complaining about the language, fuck off.
Yeah, honestly, MA 15 plus, it's 9 p.m, right? Parental guidance required. We're all adults here. We're all adults here, okay? This is an adult issue. People under 18, they're not voting.
No,
okay?
You know what?
We're all voting.
We're lifting the age from 16 to 56. So, wallah, if you're under the age of 56, you're all screwed.
And you know what? On the flip side of that, if I limit my language and I'm cautious with my language and I'm more focused on my language, the passion and the authenticity of my frustration is going to get lost at this point, right? Because I don't have the energy to tidy that up while I'm trying to convey the severity of what is happening right now. That's the truth of it. I would rather swear and be authentic because I'm tired and I'm pissed off than censor myself and lose the message to a pile of mediocrity, which is what we see in most press conferences from Australian politicians, okay? So that's my justification.
I don't know if any NBA fans are watching, but I'm giving you the Pops signal. If you're upset, Get out of here. Anyway, all right. So Crikey left the article that's written a lot of hit pieces with my name explicitly written in it. When I was arrested and thrown into prison during COVID, they wrote a whole bunch of hit pieces. But now, turn of events, they are also in support of destroying the government on this piece of legislation. So the communications minister cited a study in the support of a teen social media ban as co-author disagrees. University of Oxford professor Andrew Pritzel, I'm just going to call you Pritzel, says the government has misunderstood the purpose and findings of our research. The co-author of a study cited by the nation's communications minister in arguing for a teen social media ban says his research does not justify the policy, suggesting that the government has misunderstood the paper. On Monday, communications minister Michelle Rowland spoke in question time about why the Albanese's government is proceeding with a plan to ban Australians under the age of 16 from social media. Rowland mentioned the UK study and said that she showed the hazards of excessive use for young people on social media. In 2022, a group of UK psychologists, the neuroscientists, analysed longitudinal data on 17,400 young people. They found that young girls experience a negative link between social media use and life satisfaction when they are between the ages of 11 and 13. A negative link between social media use and the life satisfaction when they are 11 to 13 years old. And for young boys, it is when they are between the ages of 14 and 15-year-old, according to the transcript published online. It appears Michelle Rowland was speaking about the 2022 paper published in Nature Communications called Windows of Developmental Sensitive to Social Media, though she did not mention it by name. One of the paper's co-authors, University of Oxford Professor of Human Behaviour and Technology, Andrew Pritzel, said he was unaware that this work was being used in support of the policy and that its findings do not support a teen social media ban. I do not agree that it provides the justification for this policy. I think they have misunderstood the purpose and findings of our research, he said in an email to Crikey. Rowland told Crikey that the government has taken a pragmatic approach. In arriving at the age of 16, the government has taken a pragmatic approach. We have consulted widely with experts, parents, youth organisations, academics of our state and territory colleagues, she said in an email. Our approach achieves a balance between minimising the harms experienced by young people while enabling connection and social inclusion. The paper found, as mentioned by Rowland, that there are age and sex-specific windows of sensitivity to social media at a population level, but the authors continued that these most probably meaningfully differ across individuals, meaning that each person responds differently to social media based on factors such as personality, social circle, and environment. So basically it's saying a blanket ban is a bunch of bullshit. Rather than leading to the idea that we should, blanket ban children from social media, the paper's authors should suggest these findings could pave pathways for targeted interventions that address the negative consequences of social media while also promoting positive uses, which was what Pauline Hanson had touched on in her speech. The author's nuanced conclusions comport with concerns raised by the eSafety Commissioner, the government's internet safety regulator, in a letter from 140 Australian and international experts who took issue with the bluntness of a ban. A parliamentary committee looking at the impact of social media explicitly did not recommend a ban in the report. So that's what I was talking about through Sarah Hanson-Young a few days ago, getting upset that this was not recommended in the report. Published this week because of a contrasting amount of views about whether it would make young Australians safer. Pritzel told Crikey that he would be happy to work with the Australian government to help them understand their study and how it relates to the ban. It's really too bad that they did not reach out to Dr. Oben or myself before including our work, he said. And one final thing that I want to add, Cam Wilson has been on this over the last few hours, which I thought that was kind of hilarious. If I can pull up the tweet here, he goes here, this is remarkable. The teen social media ban legislation has been referred to a committee for consultation for 24 hours. If you want to have a say, you have until tomorrow. Report is due next Tuesday.
And FYI, Cam Wilson normally hates everything we stand for. So again, it's another example, just like with Sarah Hanson-Young and agreeing with One Nation and Matt Canavan and the Nationals in general, whatever. What is happening that our polar opposites are now working in unison to say, hey, this is terrible. It's a terrible idea. But to really land that at home, it's not in the recommendation. Nobody agrees that it's a good idea to ban kids, especially off the back of harm, right? Because I know that there is an equal argument to be had about the harm of banning them and banning them abruptly from something that they're dependent on. I have no doubt in my mind, and another reason why this is pissing me off is because knowing how fragile kids are these days, there's got to be a suicide or two that comes out of this from a child who feels isolated because they don't have adequate family support, and then you cut off the one support they have. What happens then? And I'm telling you, if you're in government and you vote for this and these suicides start coming up in young kids, which, by the way, has been platformed by the mainstream media as a recurring issue, right? But in relation to bullying and all these things. But on the flip side of it, one of the things that makes kids resilient to bullying is being able to connect with their friends. So
Disclaimer, help is available. Call Lifeline if you have suicidal thoughts. Reach out to someone.
Right. Well, exactly. But you're taking kids' support network.
I'm not even saying that satirically. I'm just giving that context.
Yeah, well, fair enough. I mean, most programs will do that anyway and put that there. It's a sensitive topic, but, you know, we all know kids that have done that. And it's because they feel isolated in general, right? Whether it's through bullying and whatever. What happens when you take their whole world? Their whole world. They're hypnotized by these little squares, right? These little rectangles, whatever the fuck. Hypnotized. Completely dependent. Their dopamine receptors are fried. What happens when you dramatically cut them off from the one thing that makes them feel good, especially if they don't have friends or extracurricular activities like sports and things where they feel socialized, right? What happens? So what I'm saying, and we'll refer back to this if this passes and this starts to happen, right? But any resulting suicides as a result of this ban, that's blood on your hands. And I say that very sincerely, because you failed to consider things from an alternate perspective. Nobody here has recommended that you put through a blanket ban, and yet you're doing it anyway. And that is a form of negligence toward Australian children, right? And yes, it's one of the more extreme examples of the outcomes for this, but it's not an insignificant one. And even, you know, when we're looking at the misinformation bill committees and things like that, right? Like something that really resonated with me was Lorraine Finlay from the Human Rights Commission saying, well, actually, you know, the best thing you can do in the face of mis and disinformation and all these other negative things is to provide good information, to provide educational resources, support for parents. God forbid anybody give them support with how to raise their teenagers so we don't have a rise in youth crime, right? Ways to integrate young people back into society. I can think of, I'm sure many people in Parliament can as well, think of all these different ways to get the job done outside of a ban. And it's doing my head in because, you know, we're thinking about the consequences to Australian children, but our leaders aren't. It's just absolutely cooked at this point. It doesn't matter which layer of this you look at, there is a detrimental outcome to putting forward a ban. Anyway, what you got there?
I can't remember if it was this clip, but I'll play it anyway.
We should be aiming to provide the broadest possible ambit for freedom of speech. And I think we do need to be potentially concerned that in trying to address what is a real issue around misinformation and disinformation, we don't risk undermining the very democracy that we've been talking today about needing to protect. And to us, that's really the critical issue, that in a democratic society like Australia, the best way to deal with bad opinions or issues that you disagree with is to put forward good opinions or things that you do agree with. So we think freedom of speech is fundamental to all of that and needs stronger protections in this legislation.
Yeah. Where's she at?
And did she have an opinion through this whole thing? No. Is anybody thinking about the human rights of kids? No. You know, is anyone thinking about their well-being and what constitutes the day-to-day makeup of their well-being? I don't think so.
So for people that might be wondering, I'm just having a look at the parliamentary sitting calendar, and it looks like it'll run from 8:30 a.m. and then they have a committee at 2:10, so it'll probably finish at like 5 p.m. So close of business tomorrow is when the submissions are due. So anyone that hasn't made a submission yet, I just literally read mine out, and I've made it through the portal as well. But if anyone that hasn't made a submission yet, we have, 16 hours or so, whatever it is, between now and close of business tomorrow to make a submission. So I know, trust me, I know, I have empathy. I'm also equally exhausted at trying to write all these emails and try to demand better from our government, but we got to just do this. We have to try to exhaust every possible avenue that they give us. Until all those things are exhausted, we don't pull the trigger on all the other options. But yeah, this is one of the final ones that we're going to have to deal with. So make a submission. The link is in the description of YouTube. It's posted on my page as well. I'll actually pin it at the top. I'll pin the video. So I made a video in about 4 minutes articulating exactly what you need to do. And then I also just went through the steps with you guys just before. So it shouldn't be too complicated. The only sort of annoying part is that you just have to make a Parliament account. But, let's go through all the avenues that they give us first. And then if those get completely exhausted and there's no other option, then we'll reconvene and, discuss other alternatives.
Yeah, just on the comment section on X, people are making really good points about how many kids on the spectrum utilize social media as a means of advancing their social skills and comfortability in social settings. Totally valid. I know I've personally spoken to parents with autistic kids that have that viewpoint as well. And it's so valid. Every kid is different. But, at the end of the day, we all know this has absolutely nothing to do with kids. They want digital ID, and they want, I believe, to identify us as who owns which account by the most official way they possibly can. So they know exactly who we are and who the problem is. That's why they want the misinformation bill, to be able to target individuals based on who they are as an individual, whether they're deemed credible. Just think about the way this emboldens the government to surveil us. I was saying how kids adapted through COVID, right? We kind of did too. We've built all these communities and very active communities that in our own individual ways across this space, we are lobbying the government in an unofficial capacity most of the time. Right. And if we let this slide, if we don't do everything we can to stop all of these measures, and it goes by layer, it's not just any individual bill, right? Broadly, they're trying to implement infrastructure that makes it seamless for them to identify us, to censor us, to discredit us. My mind goes wild when I think about all the ways that they can exploit us just by simply knowing who we are via our driver's licenses in relation to which accounts we own on social media. Married up again with our IP addresses, it creates a beautiful data harvest of the Australian people. This is nightmare fuel. Contact the coalition, right? Let them know that it's okay to say that your original stance was a mistake. And in fact, the Australian people will respect you if you can actually admit that the situation is more nuanced than you originally anticipated and that you wish to do the right thing by the people. Appeal to their sense of self-preservation. It's the best thing we can do. It's an unlosable election. I don't know about you. I mean, let me know in the comments. If the coalition does this, will you vote for them? Let them know. Because I don't think it's landing that a decision to do this to Australian parents and young people and to not protect us against digital ID rollouts is not an election winner.
Hey, look, I didn't want to mention this because I haven't sort of ironed out all the details just yet. But you know, and another world exclusive for 1,900 people that are watching. Because of all this rubbish going on, I thought I would do my due diligence as a person that's fortunate enough to have a platform to reach out to a VPN company. And lo and behold, I got a reply from them. And the partners relationship team reached out and said, "Hello, Anthony. We have approved your NordVPN program. I'm your dedicated account manager." So if shit hits the fan, best believe there's going to be a banner on this stream that says sponsored by NordVPN.
But you know
And
what?
we are gonna break every goddamn rule that you try to put in front of us.
It will be a matter of time before they ban VPNs, and to promote VPNs may also be considered a form of incitement to have people break the law. There are so many ways in which this is going to be a fucking problem.
What did I say to you earlier tonight? I said, surely someone in Australia has been charged twice with incitement like I have. But has anybody ever been charged 3 times with incitement in Australia? Because I feel like I've been charged twice. You may as well go for the record in the country. I'm all about setting records at this point.
Yeah. But I think people will independently, and we don't need to necessarily state that, though I would be looking at hosting the Australians versus the Agenda website internationally. But like, I think people will independently seek out VPNs and things of that nature. And honestly, so will the kids anyway, or they'll use their fucking brothers and sisters to verify accounts for them so that they can continue on their merry way. And there will be those little innocent kids that have nowhere to go, that are good kids, that are just stuck, taken off the internet, and their entire livelihood gets destroyed because some dickheads in government wanted to win an election. That's as simple as it is. And off the back of that, it's not even about them. They just want to surveil us harder. And believe me, again, if you're in politics and you're watching this, which we know that you watch it, or at the bare minimum, you get your bloody staffers to give you a rundown on the type of stuff that we said in a live stream, it's not an election winner. We know that you want to surveil us. We know that there are pressures behind the scenes to surveil us harder. We know that. So stop lying. It's got nothing to do with kids. Leave us alone. We don't want to be monitored.
And I know people that have watched the last couple of streams don't want to see this, but for any new people in the audience, the timeline just cannot be any more incredible when it comes to all this, because the misinformation bill, it looks like it will be tabled, I think it's on the 25th, on Monday. The report, so all of this is going to come to a big culmination at the end of next week. The report for this bill, the online safety amendment for the social media minimum age requirement, is due on the 26th. So best believe they are probably going to try to do a vote on the 27th or 28th. But 2.5 days later, according to everyone's favourite senator, Katie Gallagher, this rolls out, and I know there's a whole bunch of people that have seen this, but it needs to be rubbed into everyone's brains, because I know so many people have forgotten this. The safe and effective digital ID bill is passed. It has been passed. It is legislated. It will be law on the 1st of December, 3 days after the final sitting day. And here we go. Katie Gallagher.
Digital ID legislation has not come into effect yet. It doesn't come into effect until the 1st of December this year, but we have been very clear. It is a voluntary system, it is a safe system, it is a secure system, and it's simply a means of verifying yourself in a way that gives you control of your own documentation.
We've been very clear. That's the red flag. That's the red flag. We hear it in every condescending speech. We hear it. We've been very clear. We couldn't be more clear. Clear, clear, clear. And I'll say it again. Is the clarity in the room with us right now? Because I'm telling you, it'll be about as safe, effective, and voluntary as the vaccine rollout. And the reason why is because, again, social media platforms are a service. We don't have a right to a service. We simply don't. So as a term of service, if we have to verify our ID, so be it. And it's technically still voluntary, right? There's no protections for the people in this stuff. So don't think that there's going to be a way around it and that she's possibly right with all of that. I mean, they're putting forms of digital ID across government services. Anyone who's got a director's ID and even some of the ABN stuff that's getting updated requires digital ID to, again, access the service. And not everyone's angry about it or knows that it's happening. So it's a sneaky way to just get people to be compliant across the board. And what better opportunity than having to verify who everyone is online to use digital ID. So submissions, and yelling at the coalition. That's all I've got. I mean, I would love a scenario where by Monday week, the Parliament has emails chock full, has phone message banks full. Everything's been ringing off the hook. Their social medias on X and Facebook and Instagram are flooded with concerned citizens. Whatever you can to be angry about this, if you can, again, summon I'm trying not to swear now, because I've just done a whole lot of that, but if you can summon the effort within yourself to stand up for yourself and your rights online, because, you know, to not comply with this, it's going to look like removing ourselves from the service in order to bypass that. And look, I personally won't be signing up for digital ID of any kind in order to utilize the service. And like I said, if I have to, I'll stand in a bloody intersection with a sign that says they're a bunch of fucking clowns if I have to get the job done. And we'll start posting memes across the internet in people's mailboxes if need be.
I saw this tweet earlier. Matt Camanzuli shared it from an account that I actually blocked. I don't know why I blocked it, but most of the time I block accounts when they just say dumb shit and it just bothers me. Or they're just lefties that are just so annoying and nauseating that I just can't deal with seeing it on my page. And I think that's where this ban bothers me. It's like there's already these tools. Like if there's things that you don't want to see, you just use the tools and features that are available to you. However, I'm going to make this famous, even though you've probably got like 11,000 followers or something, I think. Mr. Aaron Smith, 13,000 followers. I don't know who this person is. Good on you, Aaron Smith. You made one good point, such a good point that I actually want to share it with everyone. Federal Labor's only strategy seems to be flooding us with so much bad legislation in full cooperation with the NLP that it's impossible to keep up. I feel that exact way. I am so like, I relate to that so perfectly. In full cooperation with NLP, that's impossible to keep up. The sheer volume of incompetence and disregard for the democratic principles makes it impossible to focus on any singular disaster.
Yep. And that's how I feel too. You know, we've been back to back on this. Like, when I tell you that this time of year, it's nice to have a bit of a break, but we know, true to form, that if the government is going to pull any bullshit, it will be at this time of year. And so there's been like an element of acceptance that, you know, we have to run ourselves into the ground to keep on top of what they're doing, because there's no other way. And, you know, I think Anthony probably feels the same way, where if we didn't do that and, you know, put ourselves first, we would really greatly regret that, in terms of not taking that opportunity to warn people and to get everyone on the same page about what they're doing. And it's not like a pity party here, but what I'm saying is that, you know, it affects everyone exactly the same way. It doesn't matter what way that you're contributing to the space. It's designed to fatigue each and every one of us, is the point.
Just for those that might be wondering how much stamina and mental fortitude and endurance that you need, you only need it for one more week. So the final sitting day is next week on Thursday. So one more week, everybody. I know it's draining, trust me.
And
I think
hypothetically,
there was 7,500 people joining me on an impromptu live stream at 7 a.m. this morning. If you guys were there, please give me a thumbs up in the comment section, because we rammed through everything. We went through almost every news story that was breaking about the social media minimum age bill. We watched Minister Rowland go through the first reading, been slugging at all these pieces of commentary from senators and House of Reps members all day. We're here at 11 o'clock. It's been a goddamn slug. Basically make no coin out of doing this.
No.
It's volunteer work, basically.
I'm not even gonna lie, like, we spend our day like intermittently calling each other and screaming about the dumb shit we just heard, and then section off to go do our own little independent tasks to work on that, right? So it's one more week. But failing that, and if this digital ID stuff manages to miraculously start happening early December, whatever, Christmas on the lawns at Canberra, I don't care. Christmas on the lawns at Canberra, because I'm not letting this ride into the sunset over the Christmas break. And if they make us protest it, then so be it. But we can't let this slide. They can't
I was on parole when the convoy to Canberra happened, so I unfortunately missed out. So if anyone's wondering where the hell I was on parole, and because the ACT is in a different jurisdiction, I wasn't allowed to leave New South Wales. And it was basically almost no point in writing a letter or giving a phone call to the parole officer. What is it? I don't even know who it is. Whatever it is, New South Wales, whatever people, be like, hey, can I get permission to go to frickin' Canberra for a protest?
It's all right. You missed out on getting stunned with a LRAD or whatever bloody thing they launched on us that caused all those burns and random shit, which, by the way, we haven't got an outcome on whether or not that was legal or justified. It sort of faded off into the abyss. I know Malcolm Roberts made an attempt to surface that. But look, I don't know. We'll see what happens. I think we just stay in the moment from here, see what they do, see how they vote, see how they respond over the weekend, see how it shifts the political climate. Again, I'll make the reminder that people should be in the ear of the newsrooms as well, voicing how upset they are about this. The mainstream media plays a big role in what is deemed popular and unpopular, and I think politicians need to understand how unpopular this is. So if you want to flick through your concerns to the newsroom and be like, hey, how come you're sort of letting this slide and be put on the back burner, then do that. But yeah, submissions, and we'll take it as it comes. But yeah, as a standard, we're not happy with this legislation, and I'll recap why. We're not happy with the 2-year review period. We're not happy that the Communications Minister and the E-Safety Commissioner are able to make all of these decisions without oversight, regardless of what considerations they may put in place. It's not okay that 2 people get to decide what happens in terms of the bulk of the country. That should be a parliamentary process at the bare minimum. Not that I think it should happen at all, but it should be a parliamentary decision what those, reasonable steps are to verify everyone's ID. We're not happy with investigative powers to prove compliance, in the sense that there's no stipulation that the government doesn't have access to our identity married up with our account ownership. So under no circumstances should the government have access to our ID in unison with our account ownership. Unacceptable. And we're not happy with the fact that it's getting put through as quickly as possible with little to no scrutiny or time to respond as a collective. We're not happy about that. So that's the general dot points for things like submissions, for comment sections, for sharing of things. And, even on Instagram, everyone's gone mental sharing it. I was going through all the Australians versus the Agenda story reshares, like it's back to back. People are unhappy. Even if censorship makes it look like people aren't as unhappy as they are. You're not alone in your frustrations. So don't be demoralized if you don't see an immediate outcome in terms of your algorithm, even when you're sharing things like this. But please keep sharing things like this. Whichever people are spreading the message and it's credible information, share that message. And that's what we do for now. We do our best. We do our best. I reckon it's bedtime, eh? I don't know.
Not just yet, but if you want to go, you can go.
No. Till
I just got a message from our mate Ben from Australian Talks, and
what's up, Ben?
he wants to join us to have a quick chat. But I just wanted to go through this video because I can't quite rattle my brain with what Julie Inman-Grant said, but Nathan reshared this just a bit earlier.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
With the E-Safety Commissioner also not supporting a blanket ban. I remember this committee when she was sitting here in a white, probably $5,000 dress, whatever top thing this is. But I can't remember what she said, so I just want to play it for everyone, just so I can even I can remember.
Just like surfing in the ocean or swimming in a pool, we know that social media has many benefits for young people. It can be a source of inclusion, social connection, belonging, stress mitigation, and fun. Now, these benefits are especially important for young people who experience difficulties with participation and social inclusion in other contexts. But social media also brings risk that parents, carers, and our young people are rightly concerned about. The darker waters that may hide predators or algorithmic rips. E-Safety has long advocated for age verification as part of a suite of measures to protect children from online content and conduct they are not ready for. So we're pleased to see the age assurance trial being conducted by the Department of Infrastructure. We also need to be mindful of the many nuances this issue holds and wary of unintended consequences. For example, our research has shown maturity and resilience play a really important role in determining children's experiences on social media, both good and bad. But we need to continue focusing on keeping children safer on the platforms and services they are on right now. And this is why a nationally coordinated and holistic approach is vital, ensuring our children swim between the flags and our lifeguards patrol the sands, letting our kids reap the benefits of.
Wow. You're muted right now, by the way.
I don't want to listen to her anymore. We have a guest.
Yeah, let's bring him on. What's up, Ben?
Yeah, very well. Very well. Thank you very much.
I'm going to add a window. Give me 1 sec, but yap away.
Cool, mate.
Stops yapping immediately. I don't know. I want to, before we get to Ben, I want to go to Milk Bar TV, Nathan's quotations. I was trying to read the description because if there's a conflict, he'll have put it there. Okay, so he's just quoting her. But yeah, okay. Yeah. So I guess,
There he
yeah, it
is.
does. I don't see him in the window just yet. I don't know if you're seeing it differently on your end.
No, 1 second.
Man, I'm gonna brush my hair. It's so hot here. I can't even.
There he is.
G'day, guys.
Hey.
Hey, Emily. Hey, Anthony. Great show. Yeah, of course, this is a pertinent issue. It's something that we should all be extremely concerned about, only because we understand the tactics of the people wishing to implement it, and their reasons aren't necessarily the best reasons for us all. I think it's a measure of control. I think it wishes to deprive from us an opportunity to have free speech in the country, which was sort of a grassroots campaign which has been rising over the last few years, particularly after COVID. And they wish to deny and deprive Australians of that when that's meant to be the actual bedrock foundation. That's meant to be a value in all free democracies around the world. So yeah, it's problematic that they're doing it. I congratulate all of the people that have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to push back against it, waging campaigns amongst ordinary Australians as well, and encouraging their contemporaries to touch base with certain political officers, putting out the email addresses and the contact numbers to try to influence them. I think that has proved successful as well, so they deserve kudos and congratulations for doing so. They have been effective, but we still have a bipartisan approach by Liberal and Labor who keep saying this is all about helping kids and saving kids from online harm. Meanwhile, they've done nothing for more than a decade to implement any type of practical solutions to prevent children from unabated and free access to hardcore pornography online, which I'd submit to everyone is much more dangerous and much more corrosive and much more of a problem, which the government should be interested in rather than preventing adults from saying things the government would prefer they do not say. Just quickly on Julie Inman-Grant as well. Obviously, she's a intelligence operative. Or these are my words. I'm not attributing them to anyone else, but in my interpretation, she is an intelligence operative. She is not Australian born, of course. She's a bureaucrat. The Australian people did not demand that she comes here. She may be taking like just shy of $500,000 as well as payment for her role. She's always trying to drag Elon through the courts. She's proposed such ridiculous notions of fining X if they are reluctant or unwilling to remove particular posts up to 5% of their global revenue, which basically means, hey, listen, it's not going to be really beneficial for X to remain in Australia as well. So they've been trying to force him out. Thank goodness he's got an A-list of legal superstars, which have been able to prevent her from being successful in all the campaigns she's waged against him. But for anyone that was unfamiliar about where she is and what she's actually up to in her background, so the e-safety czar, or our internet czar, the e-safety commissioner, she began her career in Washington, D.C. She's on the public record for saying she rejected a job with the CIA when she was 19 years of age, which is sort of extraordinary. There's reasons why she says she denied that offer. She didn't want to become Salt, or Angelina Jolie, the character Angelina Jolie played in the famous movie like Salt, which is quite badass. But yeah, so she rejected a job there, and instead she went on to work for Congress. And then she moved into the non-profit sector on K Street in DC on the Hill. And she worked for think tanks for several years. Then she took on a role at Microsoft for the next 17 years. And whilst at Microsoft, she served as one of the company's longest standing government relations agents. And she was actually the head of global safety. She was the director of global safety for safety and policy outreach at Microsoft as well, whose basic task essentially was to encourage governments to all get on board and all become uniform and implement a certain type of policy worldwide. because some people around the world were saying things that they would prefer they would not say. Then she exited Microsoft after 17 years in that role, a very influential role, I must add, and she moved on to Twitter under Dorsey's reign, Twitter 1.0, and she worked at Twitter for several years, and she was actually instrumental in the development and weaponization of the Orange Man Bad narrative. And she was all about, listen, we have to police language on Twitter. And then as soon as Donald Trump won, she quickly found her position untenable, of course. But her last achievement, as she refers to it, at X, formerly Twitter, before she left, was having the leader of the free world, Donald Trump, removed from the platform. So without her, Trump would not have been gotten rid of. And then, what do you know? She's arrived here in Australia and she's trying to implement similar draconian policies for us all. Yeah,
You know
so
what I think
is
is
she a bad
funny?
hombre? Yeah, she's definitely a bad hombress, I might say. I
And
don't think she's good for us.
And thank you so much for that comprehensive breakdown of all of her sins. But I don't know, she's a funny one. I don't know if you'd agree with this, in the way that I've noticed a trend amongst Australian politicians where they seem like they're almost afraid to criticize her and make every attempt to not criticize her. And I was on Q&A and managed to get an off-the-cuff question in, asking if they really think it's palatable to the public to put, you know, an unelected bureaucrat who's an American in the position of e-safety commissioner, and in particular one that has a personal axe to grind with Elon Musk. And Murray Watt on the panel basically was fact-checking me on the spot, saying that she's an Australian dual citizen, whatever. Not even that she's an Australian is what he said, but, you know, we ended up making a compilation, Australians vs. the Agenda and I, of all the times that she had explicitly alluded to her American heritage on Twitter. And one of the quotes that was in there, hail to another girl sneakily infiltrating the Commonwealth. And I was like, this is perhaps the easiest fact check I've ever performed in my natural born life. This chick is American through and through. And yet, you know, my comment about that is being dismissed off the back of her being a dual citizen. But it's not really about that so much as it is she's got history with Elon, and the bulk of her experience comes from an international standpoint.
Yeah, well, she's problematic. She's adversarial, and she runs an agenda contrary to what we would hope will become prevalent in this country. She's also an acolyte of Klaus Schwab in the World Economic Forum. People will be able to pull up clips of her where she speaks there on an annual basis and gets across to Davos and a few other type events. And she speaks openly and without any hesitation why the First Amendment isn't such a good thing, why the First Amendment is dangerous, and perhaps why that amendment should actually be rewritten, because the First Amendment allows hate speech, as she refers to it as. Now, obviously, we can all understand that hate speech is just speech that certain people disagree with. We're not advocating for violence here, but she interprets certain language which is going in the opposite direction of where the government would prefer it to go as hateful, and she has tasked herself with denying people in this country and also the wider world from utilizing their free speech. And the reason why it's extremely important for us to have free speech is because free speech comes secondarily to the ability to think freely. If you cannot think freely, you certainly cannot speak freely. And if they can curb our speech, they're actually curbing our ability to think. So it's a thought police mechanism which they're trying to implement. Now, our government's proposed and advocated for this misinformation and disinformation policy or bill that they're hoping to ram through. And millions of Australians, I believe, they feel that this digital ID million, Anthony, it's the imposition of a 1984 type tactic. And I think the sentiments of those people who do interpret it as that potentially I think they're extremely well founded. I think the government's trying to seek to deprive Australians of their right to make comments online anonymously, but also to access the free internet as we know it. The digital ID bill, we can rest assured, isn't just about protecting children, and it is the first step. Where secondarily to that, they're going to implement internet licenses. We all know with our driver's licenses, if we perform something which is considered illegal, we lose demerit points. And
It's
the
such
government,
a it's such a good way that you just put it, because I was struggling to put it in a way that really lands with people, but it really is an attack on our anonymity. But veering away from the e-safety commissioner, like, have you been keeping up with the events in the Senate? I'm interested in your perspective on all the things that are going on in the Parliament and what your temperature check is on the scenario.
well, I think it's remarkable that certain people who we may oppose a lot of the time, who we didn't think had any redeemable qualities, are now stepping up to the plate. And whereas previously there was a polarization, particularly based on their ideology, they seemed eternally separate. But there has been some unification, and this has afforded them an opportunity to unify. Now, they are still considered outcasts within the Senate, but to tell you the truth, this is what the Australian public have needed. They've needed people to put aside their personal agendas and set aside their egos and to work for the benefit of all Australians, particularly with something as important as this. So, am I encouraged by that? Yes, certainly I am encouraged by it. Would I like to see more of it? Absolutely. I think this is just the first step to us getting there. But I would congratulate a few of those people. And I'm so reluctant and hesitant to say it, but I'm quite like, I saw Sarah Hanson Young, somebody I normally find detestable, absolutely detestable. But
Same.
I saw her make some remarks. I was like, well, hang on a second. She is not completely irredeemable, because on this point, we can utilize her and we'll take as many allies as we can. And similarly with Fatima, right? So she was booted out. She went over there to Perth. She did her own thing. And people were like, hey, I don't like this woman. She's advancing certain things, which I may not agree with. And perhaps she's problematic. But there are enough calls to her office where she's now taken a stand and she's good to go. So we'll use them where we can. So I'd give some congratulations to Senator Fatima Payman and a couple of others. Of course, I just think they're following along with legends. Renick's a legend, Antics a legend, Babbitt's a legend in their own unique way. And I think what the Senate is actually all about. The Senate is about true representation of diverse viewpoints around Australia. And we'll throw Lydia Thorpe into that as well, because many people become very aggravated and agitated by a lot of her behavior, which is understandable. But if she's willing to draw a line in the sand on certain things, once again, we will welcome her into the fold. We will never have consensus on everything, but on something as vital and as important as what is being proposed at the moment, yeah, I think they're on the right page, and I think the Senate should remain extremely diverse in its viewpoints. I think all the people in there should have a little bit of eccentricity about them as well, which they do, and I think they should rub people up the wrong way.
Yes, I agree. And Anthony and I were talking about this earlier in the week, how it's very interesting the way that these characters that have so severely stuffed us all over in the past have had a funny way of redeeming themselves, to the point where we can even acknowledge that, like, if Lydia Thorpe wasn't an independent and if Fatima Payman wasn't an independent, we wouldn't have the numbers for certain things. And they've actually become a headache for the respective parties that they hailed from. And it's shaken things up in a way that has been ultimately beneficial for us, even though I can't get with the program in terms of condoning people that are baby killer apologists. And by baby, I don't mean like even just in the womb. I'm talking exited the womb, newborn baby killers. Cannot get on board with that under any circumstances. There's something wrong with you if you don't think that they deserve life-saving care. But in saying that, I am grateful that you can stand up, I suppose, for kids under 16 that want to use social media.
And one other aspect as well. So Julie Grant, if she gets her way, and if this digital ID bill is rammed through, we're actually not progressing into an open forum. We're being backed into a corner and walked off a plank, for lack of a better term, and simply for daring to make up our own minds on an array of pertinent issues which are confronting us all. And the aspect of it, Millie, that raises red flags for me is that some people in government and the bureaucracy are actually seeking to implement this. They think that it's warranted. That they can't read the writing on the wall. They don't know that it's a fast track to 1984, or in some cases, I would at least grant them that they actually want to implement such a strategy. Some of them applaud the tactics that are utilized by the CCP because they're in it for control. And of course, just like the COVID agenda, there'll be exemptions granted to certain people and certain individuals. So they'll be exempt. They'll be allowed to still do whatever they want to do. But the ordinary folk, the common folk, the taxpayers, Australians who don't see themselves as politicians, parliamentarians, whatever it may be, well, they will be silenced. And not only is it a silencing, it's a cutting out of the tongue, it's a stitching of the lips, and then they're having their hands tied behind their back, or figuratively, that they're having their hands chopped off so they can't type messages. And so, for people to be advancing such a notion, I think it's abhorrent, and I think it's in fact anathema to what this country is truly meant to be about.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I mean, I kind of feel called to remind people as well that, you know, you were talking about all our friendly senators and senators that have done the right thing in the recent past and whatever, but I feel like I want to remind people that everybody has a vested interest in this upcoming election. And even on the right side of the fence, it tends to go hand in hand with a lot of intellectual dishonesty. And I would like to see political parties be, I guess, demonstrating integrity, whereas in the past they've gone for the more sort of cheap popularity tactics. And I'm just going to call one of them out because I think that it does demoralize the people sometimes if you do these things without them understanding why you did them. And not that it's wrong to do them, but it's wrong to not explain to people why you did them. So like when they put in, say, like a motion of urgency, like for the live births bill, or just random little motions, like say if they want royal commissions or whatever it is, they put forward these things that they know are going to flop. And they do it because it's the right thing to do to take a stance against certain things, but they do it without explaining that it is destined to flop and why. Because they bank on the fact that people don't understand that what happens in the parliament is a numbers game. So what I'm noticing as a trend is that, you know, even Alex Antic's done it before. Like they'll put forward something that's well-intended and fantastic, but it flops and people get angry and upset and demoralized that it flopped because nobody's taken the time to explain, well, actually, it was always going to flop. And that's okay, you know, until the point where we get the numbers in which we can pass these things and whatever else. So I guess the reason I'm bringing that to light is not to criticize any of our friendly senators, but I want to see us actually bridge that communication factor where everybody in the parliament starts to get with the program in the sense that the Australian people aren't stupid and we can be, you know, still supportive of everything you do while you keep it real with us. And we don't need to sensationalize a lot of different things in order to win support from the public. Simply doing the right thing and being forthright about it is enough to secure people's votes. And in particular, just watch out for friendly fire as well, because there's a few in competition with each other. And it tends to end up being a shit fight against members of the public when it comes to who is the best option to vote for. But, you know, when it comes to voting, it's going to be tough, like in Queensland and stuff. We've got Gerard, Renick, Malcolm. There's a lot that are coming up against each other, and it's awkward in that respect. But I would advise people to just be on the lookout for ways that they might be trying to discredit each other, and then thinking to yourself, well, how can I make sure that everybody gets the best outcome, regardless of who my favourite MP is. Anyway, that's my little tangent.
Well, it is show business for ugly people. So we'd hope to beautify it just a little bit more than what it is. But, you're born the way you are as well. I'd like to make politics sexy again. At least then, if politics was sexy again, it'd be a lot easier to watch. And I know a lot of the time, our great mate Australians versus the Agenda, he has to sit through a lot of this stuff. And I'm sure he would appreciate if it is much more aesthetically pleasing.
I mean, that's real random, but I can't disagree with it, I suppose.
No, I've 100% been trying to advocate for that, but like not directly, because I've come to realize over the last few years that Australia is such a broad and diverse, not like multicultural, but like the Aussies, like the real true Aussies that I meet are just some weird people. But like to be able to try to empathize and understand their way of living has been like a big learning curve for me. So it's like, it's made me sort of be a bit more humble in my approach, especially when it comes to trying to make things aesthetically pleasing, because, not all of us are born as pretty as Millie, but, I think one thing that I do know is that I hate the optics of what our parliament currently looks like. Like, you've got Katie Gallagher, for example. Like, the one thing that really grinds my gears is that whenever I have to make a post, right, what I do with the posts is that I put a tile with an image of the person that's talking. And the problem that I have when I confront these people is that 99.9% of them are so unaesthetically pleasing, it's disgusting. Like, have you seen how Michelle Rowland looks? There's not one aesthetically pleasing photo of her that exists.
In his opinion.
And she actually got better looking, for lack of a better term, because a few years ago she was super overweight.
Yes, well, what's that drug? Ozempic works wonders. But most importantly on that,
Ozempic ages you and makes you lose bone density. So nobody at home take Ozempic, please, for the love of God. But also, just before you scoot off, I personally believe that beauty shows on the outside as it does from within. So all these politicians that look a bit evil, it's because they are. Like, oftentimes, if they just took that weird, sinister smirk off their face and had a bit of life in the eyes instead of this dead behind the eyes authoritarian sort of thing, you'd actually see natural beauty shining through a lot of these parliamentarians. Please continue.
No, spot on. So with that, I would definitely accept an ugly exterior if the message coming out was remarkably perfect, if it was beautiful, if it was attractive. But what we're seeing a lot of the time is not only is the exterior ugly, at least to my own lying eyes, but the message itself is extremely ugly. And I think that's what you're touching upon there, Millie, because where's the character, where's the spirit, where's the love, where's the appreciation for this country? Yeah. Where's the desire to wish to make Australia better for those who have no decision-making ability whatsoever? Where's their true resilience to stand in the face of adversity and make the right decision because that's going to be beneficial to the most Australians? There seems to be a desire in many of them to just enrich themselves. And speaking about the ugly, like the ridiculousness of having somebody like Kerry Chant. Kerry Chant was up there. She wasn't nice to look at, and she wasn't the epitome of health. Now, I'm not like in remarkable shape, but the point is, we can go through them. There's a whole lot of subject matter right there. I'm quite happy to break it down with a few.
Well, I think what you're drawing on is so important in the ways where intention shines through as well. Chant from Punch Bowl is a really good example of somebody that's well-intentioned but a little bit kooky on the eyes, But, as Anthony was just pulling up the grid and stuff, I'm like, well, to be honest, Lydia Thorpe's looking a little bit gorgeous lately. And I think it's because all her fucks to give went out the window, and she's clean of spirit now, right? Because she's in her authenticity and she's not taking shit from anyone. And I think it shows. And I think it's attractive characters is what we need in the parliament. We don't need performative characters. We need attractive characters with conviction, like you were saying, Ben. People that love this country but exude their love for this country, and in particular, showcasing a protective instinct over this country. And that's really missing. And I think probably the person I see that the most from would be Pauline Hanson intermittently, but it's not anyone's baseline, right? And I think it's okay to start getting angry and passionate again about what's going on in the country. And if you're not, I suppose, prepared to dip into that side of yourself anymore, please do step aside for the next generation of us who will quite happily go in there and box on with every single one of these people that are trying to destroy our futures.
Well, and you might have seen, I think Lydia Thorpe just put out a tweet either today or yesterday. She was marching through the halls somewhere and she had a little poster in her hand. She had to stick it to the wall. Right now, based on the way and roll with this, right? I was supposed to gender roll with this, Anthony. So, based on her utilization of a product from her mouth, which was chewing gum to attach to the back of that poster and then slap it onto the wall, I would submit to people that I never thought it could be possible. But if we do ever have a Department of Government Efficiency, because of the cost saving measures she implemented by utilizing recycling her chewing gum instead of utilizing blue tack at taxpayers' expense to stick something on the wall, you know, she's actually doing okay. I don't mind her being feisty. And the reason why is because she's passionate. So I can accept passion. I don't have to agree with the message of the passion, but I know she gives a damn. Right. And I think that's the most important commodity in all of our politicians. Do they actually give a damn about people other than themselves? Now, Lydia might go about it the wrong way. People might say, well, she's not truly Aboriginal and all of this type of stuff. She was a grandmother at 36 years of age, for goodness sake. So I'm not sure about good parenting right there. But regardless of all of that, right, she's feisty and she's in their face and she gives zero about everyone else. Right? She'll say what she says. So she's an embodiment of a feminist in a sense as well. I didn't support her antics where she got on all fours and was crawling on her knees on the grass up there in Canberra like 12 months ago.
Oh, it was hilarious. It was so funny.
Right?
Oh, it was so funny.
Her skirt riding up and all of these types of things.
That was the best shit I've ever seen, seriously.
And she's not polished as well. She's not polished. I know she does appeal to certain people, and that's fine. You know, beauty is in the eye of the beholder in that sense. But she's not super sophisticated and she'll never get there. She doesn't have to be, but she's a champion of the causes she truly believes in. She was one of the only politicians in this country that gave 2 middle fingers to the king when he arrived in this country. She said, I won't deal with it. I've had enough. And she speaks her mind. I can appreciate that. There's a little bit of Ned Kelly in that, right? There's a little bit of I'm a rebel with a cause about that. Will she become super successful? Will she be able to actually appeal to the mainstream? Of course not, because her message, her rhetoric is too corrosive to them. It affects their sensibilities far too much. But does she have a seat at the table? Yes. I think everybody should have a seat at the table. And I want to battle her in her of ideas, and let's allow the Australian people to decide which ideas win.
And look, unpopular opinion, but I don't think she should be censured. Whatever, we're all adults. She's a member of the parliament like anyone else. I think that if she wants to express herself, she's free to do that, so long as she's not committing an act of violence. Really simple for me. I don't see an issue with it. A lot of people have mixed views on the king. I mean, I'm still dirty about Diana, personally. I'm dirty about that. A long time ago.
I think you're right too. So if I can just touch on that for a brief moment. So there's lots of talk from certain people in this country about all reparations because of the adverse conditions they're living in, as what they refer to as a genocidal campaign by the British royal family. Because when we talk about the British Empire, no, that's the British royal family. When they talk about restitution needs to be paid in compensation, I may be supportive of that, but I'm certainly not supportive of Australians who participated in none of those atrocities, as they refer to them as, during the invasion, as they refer to it as. Us modern people who had nothing to do with that, having to step up to the plate and satisfy their financial requirements. So they can perhaps feel better about it to receive the compensation. What I would like to see is I'd like to see them push back against the British royal family. And if that means the British royal family has to sell some palaces, maybe auction off a few of the royal jewels to satisfy whatever that bill is, hey, I'm pretty supportive of that. If we're going to have to pay the bill one way or the other, allow the true perpetrators, the instigators, the British royal family, to satisfy that invoice rather than Australians who had nothing to do with it whatsoever.
I'll tell you what, all the Aboriginal debate really pisses me off on both sides of the fences. On both sides of the fence, gosh. But the reason being is that it's not entirely honest on both sides. I think it's wrong to equate our Aboriginal people to be in the same basket as, African Americans in the US. We're talking about a big gap in time in terms of the difference. Their slavery was abolished and all of that has been and done a very long time ago, whereas only in the 70s were our Aboriginal people declassified as flora and fauna. My childhood friends was, and this is 80s, as early as the 80s, it's not that long ago, right? Where he was denied custody in terms of being with his Aboriginal father off the back of the fact that he was Aboriginal and instead was made to remain with his schizophrenic mother. And that's in a court document. Like, I've seen that, and it's because his father was Aboriginal that he was not placed in his care, but he had a stable job. He was an active member of the community. There was no reason as to why he wasn't placed with his father. Like, there are things that people don't visually see through all the noise in terms of what Aboriginal people have had to recover from in very real ways.
That's the intergenerational trauma. Speak about that.
Right, that's exactly right. The generational trauma. Okay, we've got people, you think about how much our own parents influence us and our grandparents. You look at people off the back of substance abuse, the stolen generations. Even when I was in Canberra for the gay marriage debate, I stayed with Aboriginal people in our accommodation because one of the issues with changing, I suppose, like the Marriage Act regarding children, the conversation was brought up as well, how we handle kids in all different sorts of backgrounds. And so we had members of the Aboriginal community there to talk about the stolen generations and the way that the system is still not reformed in such a way where people are getting the help that they need so that they can continue to raise their own children. And it's a system that keeps feeding itself. And doing the grog bans and stuff has been somewhat helpful out in the regional communities, but it's not enough. And then we've got sort of the Aboriginal industry that's capitalising, all of these financial benefits in regards to Aboriginal people, but it's not being allocated into fixing the problem, right? We've got a generational hurt, and part of it is that people are very dismissive of what these families have gone through. And truthfully, if I didn't have people close to me where I could say I've witnessed in a first-hand capacity what this looks like in terms of generational trauma, I probably wouldn't be as sympathetic to it either, but I've seen it. And it's a huge deal what was done to the Aboriginal people. Now, as people that didn't perpetrate anything against them, are we responsible for that? Should we feel shame about that? Personally, no. My family going back had absolutely nothing to do with so-called colonisation. But does there need to be a bit of respect? And I don't mean respect as in a voice referendum that does absolutely 2/5 of fuck all for Aboriginal people. But I think, the education factor is quite important in terms of respect for the impact.
And so the welcome to country doesn't satisfy whatever that void is there as well. So the intergenerational trauma is a real thing because that's what they're telling us. It's amazing because they still have the lowest life expectancy rate in this country. They still have the lowest levels of home ownership, tertiary qualifications, etc. And it's glaring to me. It's a glaring oversight that people can come to this country from many countries around the world, and within one generation, their children are graduating law and medicine. Yet the Indigenous populations, 200 years later, the vast majority of them are still living like it's 200 years ago. So the Australian government is paying for Indigenous causes over $30 billion a year, which is basically more than the total bill of Medicare in the country for people to be able to put it at scale. So it's a massive amount of cash. Over $30 billion a year we're giving to Aboriginal organisations, Indigenous organisations, oversight committees, NGOs, whatever they may be, community groups, to try to arrest some of these problems which are becoming multi-generational. So I ran the numbers, and what I found out is if we took that 30 billion and instead of giving it to all of the NGOs to disperse at their own discretion, which obviously has proven that it hasn't been able to arrest a lot of these issues over the last decade now at least, if we took that 30 billion and we actually divided that up and distributed that to every person in the country who identifies as Indigenous. I'm not talking about the latecomers who have recently come, because Pauline Hanson spoke about this.
We're not ticking the box, but actual proven generations.
Yeah. So a decade ago, there were roughly 300,000 who identified as Indigenous. As it presently stands right now in 2024, just shy of 800,000 are identifying as that. And there's financial reasons for doing so. So I don't begrudge them. They're taking advantage of the system. And when Pauline Hanson proposed there needs to be a DNA test done, the rest of the government, who should have been in alignment with that, said, no, we can't do that because that's going to be problematic as well. I understand that. But the point here is, so if we took the 30 billion and instead of giving it to the NGOs and these organizations who are ineffective in their distribution of the funds to arrest a lot of these multi-generational issues, if instead, just even for 1 year, we distributed that to the true Aboriginals, let's call them 250,000 people, we'd be able to give each one of those Aboriginals $75,000.
Well,
$75,000 each. And they're talking about how can we bridge the gap? How can we bring these people up? And I've asked Aboriginal people, I said, would 75 grand help you? And they're like, bloody oath, 75 grand would be awesome for me instead of it going to the NGOs. And the argument against that, the pushback against that is they say, well, many of them would be irresponsible. Many of them would spend it on alcohol, drugs, gambling, whatever it may be. That might be true. Oh, well, exactly. But there would be Aboriginal people in this country who would utilize those funds effectively, and they'd be able to truly build futures for themselves. They'd be able to formulate entrepreneurial groups. If necessary, they'd be able to start businesses. They'd be able to take some time off to potentially attain tertiary education. They'd be able to put their children through private school. They'd be able to acquire home ownership. And that $75,000, that would come tax-free on top of whatever they're already receiving from the government. So it would put so many Aboriginals into six-figure incomes immediately, and that would be transformative because at the moment they're living under the thresholds of poverty in most cases.
And look, to pivot off that, because, I mean, we could discuss every aspect of Australian politics and probably do a more comprehensive job than what we've seen in the media and the dialogue within the bloody parliament. But another example of, like, crappy spending habits would be the wealth transfer that seems to be going on with Ukraine, and how, you know, that nice little subsidy we were promised on the electricity bill could have been made up by the amount that we've sent overseas to Ukraine. And I'm still pissed off. I think we should have our tanks back. I don't care if they're tanks from the 80s. I would like them back on Australian soil, please.
Well, on that point, so Zelensky, we gave him the tanks. Penny Wong sent over some stuff and a few other things, and a few of these, or that equipment, might have been considered relics because it was from the Vietnam era, but it had been rejuvenated, it had been remodeled, so it was good, helicopters included. Zelensky was being sent them, and he turned around to the Australian government and said, I don't want this shit. It's archaic. I need modern weaponry. On top of that, ScoMo, this started with ScoMo. He sent them $200 million worth of AK-47s and rocket launchers to murder Russians with. thinking that was somehow going to make a dent. And I'm thinking to myself, what the hell are we doing arming someone in a conflict on the other side of the world anyway? We should have nothing to do with this whatsoever. If we want to provide $200 million, well, let's bring out some people from the Ukraine who are skilled people who need to evacuate a war zone. Let's bring them over here and set them up so they can immediately contribit to the country.
Look,
To
all I'm
do
gonna
anything but
say-
that, it's a drop in the ocean. It's not going to be satisfactory. The Americans alone have spent over $200 billion and it's got us nowhere. And after the recent decision of what Joe Biden's just done, giving them the missiles, Putin ain't happy. Like this is a fast track into global conflict that we should have nothing to do with.
All I can say on that is I've seen them dancing on TikTok, but I haven't seen any real military conflict going around. But look, anyway, I mean, we should probably bring it back to, I guess, the subject matter at hand. Have you made a submission? Are you going to make a submission? I imagine if you did, it would be very detailed. And are you going to encourage others to make a submission against all of these bans and things of that nature?
For myself, I speak to a couple of the... Oh, I guess I can say it. Yeah, I touch base with several of the chief of staffs and their media managers and a few of the politicians and senators that I think could assist going forward. I'm trying to emphasize to them the importance of this. So certainly I have conversations behind the scenes about those things and try to point them in the right direction and to help define what their messaging should be on it. And I guess in a nutshell, that messaging should be zero tolerance for any infringement against free speech in this country. But there's people out there that are doing phenomenal things. They're coordinated. They've built websites. Francie Mumu is one individual, but much like what Anthony's doing. Anthony's kicking ass. He's out there, man. Australians versus the Agenda is having a profound effect because the message is going far and wide. And similarly to yourself, you may be doing things a little more subtly, but at the end of the day, for myself, ideas are bulletproof, and I'm fully committed to the task at hand. So I'll do it the best way I can. But in my professional life, I do things in the major infrastructure and stuff like that as well. So I can't be too outspoken on a
No, you're
public
extremely well spoken, very respectful, and not in the slightest bit edgy, despite saying what could be perceived as controversial opinions. And that's a skill set I see a lot behind the scenes in Australian politics. Me, I don't care. Like, we're talking about it in my language.
I had to learn to be diplomatic to be able to retain a seat at the table, because
Yeah.
many people at those tables who are the key decision makers, they have very fragile sensibilities.
See, you say that you enjoy being able to have a seat at the table. I think I can at least speak on my behalf, possibly Millie as well. We have a knack of being able to just materialize our way
table, I don't
into
know.
room. You know,
Which is around.
if the room or the table is not welcoming us, we welcome ourselves to the table.
Well, if I was there at the Aussie Cossack event and all you were doing
I
was
was waiting for that.
Oh, not that event. That's like not even a table. That's a fucking dumpster fire, that was.
I get it, but if I was there and all you were perceived as doing, which is in fact exactly all you were doing, was sculling a jug of Coca-Cola, and they wish to remonstrate with you and drag you out of there by the collar, by the scruff of your neck, yeah, I would have been able to probably prevent that from taking place.
Well, don't forget urinating on Instagram Live. Now that was pretty good. I think that was probably more the reason for being kicked out, but
I'm probably more hardcore than most, but I can recognize a time and a place for it as well. I recognize a time and a place for it. Only because there's so many Australians who are unable to have their messages heard. And I guess what I would like to do is to be able to be a conduit for those people. because
Well-
that's to me that's important. So I'm not really about myself. I couldn't give a shit about celebrity or anything. I don't want to be known as anything like that. But what I want to be is I want to be able to convey their message to people that through no fault of their own, they never have an opportunity to do so.
Well, it's funny that we're talking about this because, like, for me, probably the last 2 years, I would say that I limited my edginess in order to maintain political relationships. But over time, I've realized I don't actually quite need to do that because I think my intention's really clear, but also being yourself as much as possible. And not that I wasn't myself, I would say just maybe a little watered down in terms of what I would put my foot into and what I wouldn't. But being authentic adds value to the conversation is all I will say. And we don't necessarily need to limit ourselves and our influence in order to gain approval. I know that, you know, people in the Liberal Party and the National Party don't like it when you mouth off about things because it's too edgy for them. But at the end of the day, they'll get around whatever's convenient. It doesn't matter. If you have something they need or the proverbial threat is big enough, it doesn't actually matter what it's delivered in. And all information conveyed from the general public up to the upper echelons of the parliament is valuable because it tells them about the demographics that they're talking to. So, you know, and just to really like land that, I don't have ill intention toward anyone in parliament, but where I stand is my loyalty is to the people. So if I see any of you messing with the Australian people, I'm going to have something to say about it, whether it's poking holes in your integrity and your motivations for things and keeping them vigilant, like in regard to election tactics, or, you know, holding you accountable for not showing up to a vote and for, you know, letting shit legislation fly through the parliament at that speed. I will do that. And I can acknowledge that and say their behaviour is shit, but a lot of you within have redeeming qualities. And I like to try and hold that in harmony because that's the reality and the compassion that I think we need to start having for, you know, what is an individual quality, what's a collective decision, where do the two intersect, what pressures are there at play. And even, you know, like with what we just did with Lydia Thorpe, like we can meet people where they're at without having this polarized, everyone's fucking evil sort of mentality. Because the thing is about everything that's rolled out via this agenda that is global is that nobody who succumbs to this shit, unless they're like an egomaniac, and there's a few of those in there floating around, but nobody who succumbs to this shit does it off their own back. There's some form of threat or sacrifice or loss of status, or I mean, there are people, I know some wild things people have done to get MPs out of positions in parliament. Like they'll dead set lie, and this is all like behind the scenes sort of stuff, but no one's immune. No one's immune from what's happening, and the best thing we can do is actually keep it real with each other.
So I'll keep it real for you then for a moment, I guess, to give you a bit of different perspective, just to solidify. Am I with all you guys? Yeah, damn right. Of course I'm with all you guys. I knew it because for people unaware, I was just minding my own business. I was down in Canberra. I was sitting at the table, waiting for Tucker Carlson to come on out and have a chat. And the next thing I knew, my good mate there, he was sitting right beside me. I was like, "What the fuck are you doing here, bro?" And he's like, "Hey, man, Alan." And so, you know, connection through that. So that was awesome. But we actually met probably a year and a half prior to that when I was with Elijah, and we rocked up down in Sydney, and Ant was with Diogo, and we were like, "Hey, man, this is awesome." And he brought me up to speed with all the work he's doing. So I found it phenomenal, and I congratulate him. I think he's been a supreme addition to the conversation here in the country, and he's doing vital work as well. And that's not blowing wind. That's true recognition of the tireless efforts that you're doing, and you're doing it for the right reasons. But the government made you into this as well because they turned you into a political prisoner through no fault of your own, man, through no fault of your own. But then also, that's where I went into you as well, Millie, at the Tucker event down there at Canberra at the luncheon. And I was like, damn right. Like this girl, she's onto it. She's a true believer. And
Yeah.
to me, that's all that matters. But yeah, so I think the bureaucracy in Australia is gargantuan. I think it's a gargantuan monster. I think it's sinking its claws into anything within its reach. I think in some instances, the CCP is jealous of the intrusion that it's able to demonstrate with its intrusion into the lives and livelihoods of so-called free peoples. I think we're nowadays living amongst a pandemic of public servants who place self-interest above the public good, and I would like to have that go in the opposite direction. I could say much more, but I respect what can and can't be said on this program, and so
that's
I'm
fine.
happy to bite my tongue just a little bit, knowing that we do not have the First Amendment just yet.
Yeah. And look, we can read between the lines anyway. That's one thing I think as a collective we've gotten really good at. We can infer things and have people pick up exactly what we're throwing down, and it makes us quite immune to certain censorship. And our ability to read the room, I would ask that people extend that ability to individuals, just sizing people up, whether they're in Parliament or not. Ignore the authority, ignore the puppetry, and start looking at people at an individual level and see what your gut picks up about them, and then approach it that way, right? Because it's not like there's some magical overarching authority, and I do my best to try and deconstruct the perception of authority for people however I can. Like, most of the time, they're in a room, they're standing at their desk or whatever, or behind a lectern on the TV, and once you start to think about the backdrop, it becomes less threatening what you're seeing on the main screen. And we need to start humanizing each other to the point where we can look at these politicians and say, oh, wait a minute, who is that guy to tell me what to do? There is no threat. The guy with the speech impediment isn't really in a position to tell me what I can and can't do with my life.
You're talking about the guy from the Greens who also rolls around in a wheelchair.
Take your pick. There's a few.
Yeah.
Take your pick. I'm sure they're probably all coming under that umbrella, but you know what I mean? Like, the chicks with the shit haircut aren't in a position to be telling me what to do with my own kids. Is an attitude I want to see become very common amongst Australian parents, for example.
Well, it must be said for the record that Penny Wong's favourite product in the world is a battery.
Penny Wong and I go way back to the gay marriage debate. Penny Wong and I go back.
And in 2010, she actually opposed it, as most of them did. And at the time, she was still a lesbian. She was involved in a relationship, but she was on the public record saying that I don't think this is the best way for children to be raised. I think there should be some restrictions on some of these things, but you know, they had to turn the tide. But I guess touching upon what you just said, and I know maybe you might be wrapping up very shortly, so I'm cognizant of that as well. So if this will be my final remark, I'm quite happy to make it.
Okay.
I think the social media itself and the X platform, it's gifted me a chance to be able to understand a wide array of people more deeply. It's exposed me to diverse belief systems, or two diverse belief systems, and therefore that allows me to reassess and to reconsider and evolve my worldview if it has holes in it, right? But it's also enabled me to find compassion for strangers when previously I might have been able to ignore their plight. And I think that during everyone's lives, the world around us, it tries to beat us down. It tries its very best to break us. It wants to make us feel isolated. It wants to make us feel detached. It attempts to convince us to give up on ourselves, right? But I would encourage people to not give into that feeling, because every single person is valuable. And I know that the vast majority of people that are out there, they're just working. They're just trying to put food on the table. They're trying to run businesses. They're just trying to do the right thing because they have serious responsibilities and commitments. And they're the silent majority. And if I can be anything, I just want to be the vocal minority of that silent majority. And so Anthony's doing it. You're doing it in your own unique way. I think we're a nation of contributors. And I would like to see more recognition of that, because I know so many people do give a damn. I know so many people whose hearts are in the right places. They just feel like they've been thrown overboard, and they don't want to raise their head up just in case it'll get chopped off. And they're far too busy to deal with this shit. Australians, by default, are politically apathetic. And we're politically apathetic because we know they're all lying bastards anyway. And so they'd rather be doing meaningful things for their family and not so concerned. But I do think it's important for Australians to take some type of interest in politics, because if they do not, we're going to be led astray by politicians who aren't working in our best interests.
I agree. And I think, like, I guess establishing our own connections with the true believers, like you say, is encouraging. Like, I know that over the last few years, like, working so closely alongside Anthony, like in pretty much this whole shit show, like since the dawn of time, like even when it came to the protests, and, you know, by the grace of God, I wasn't put in jail as well. I don't know how. I really cannot tell you how, logically, how he managed to get all of these penalties placed on him, but nobody seemed to notice my hand in that as well. And I'm grateful for that, because it's enabled, I suppose, that situation where one gets taken out and the other still remains. And so there's been like no one's really lost any sort of influence, so to speak, or whatever. Like, he's been able to come back in and pick up where he left off, basically. It's good.
That shit just galvanized me. Like, I had a slump for like 6 months where I was just like mentally and physically just so out of it, and fell into a bit of a spin of a depression, if you want to call it that. But once I got my wits, my God, not only has it galvanized me, now I'm like as fit as I've ever been in my life. My mental fortitude is probably as good as it's ever been as well. And like I've said to so many people, this is just a means to an end for me. I don't do this because it's fun. I don't have fun at freaking watching House of Representatives for 9 hours a day, and watching the Senate for 12 hours a day, and watching Daniel Andrews sit in front of a purple canvas wall for 4 hours every day, and then listening to Julie Inman-Grant yapping on about how I have to follow her doctrine on what freedom of speech parameters she wants to establish for Australia as a freaking goddamn moron from America, you know. But for me, this is just a means to an end. My whole reason why I still do this to this day is basically just to get my revenge. I am born with so much.
They created a monster. Yeah, they made you. They made you, man. And now they have to lay in that bed, bro.
I am born by nature with such a volatile vengeance that when someone does wrong by me, I will go to the depths of hell to get one back. And right now, I've come to the conclusion that getting mine back is going to be a bit of a grind, but it is going to come. And they hate that we can be talking to 2,500 people at 12:15 in the morning on a Friday morning, and, you know, be able to amplify our message, be able to break through their barrier of propaganda. They hate it.
That's retribution.
Like,
yeah, and there's a place for retribution, isn't there, Millie? There is a place for retribution against those who have done things which they shouldn't have done.
I think that like, God has a habit of turning a nobody into a somebody to balance things out. And I see that a lot in Anthony. I see that across the board. There are people that come along and are spontaneously motivated to create a thorn in the side of everybody who's perpetrating these attacks on the Australian people. And that's what I sort of see happening. But, you know, the compassion factor, like, it's not about us as like individuals. We happen to be in various positions of whether it's leadership or behind the scenes support or whatever it is at any given time. But the conviction is the same. And what we're trying to do really is inspire conviction across the board. Like, to know that everybody can be this annoying to the government should they choose to be. Everybody can be this annoying to the government should they choose to be. Everybody can piss off these motherfuckers the same way should they choose to be. And it's true, but, you know, we've been disempowered, and environment shapes your mentality, right? Consider the environment of Middle Australia, disconnected from politics, consuming propaganda daily, having their confidence shot by so many different things. Their value and sense of self-esteem is not really there. They don't have that background to defend themselves. So the best thing we can do as people is inspire them to be confident in taking a stance on something. And it's not done by talking at people. It's done by walking the talk and demonstrating your authenticity in terms of what you believe, and inspiring them to feel the sense of liberation and peace and conviction and purpose that you have in your life. Talking at somebody or like stroking your own ego doesn't ever inspire people. But what does is doing uncomfortable things and talking to everybody like they're somebody, and refusing to dismiss people in a collective.
Yeah, so you've got to meet them where they're at as well, right?
Bang on, I say it all the time. It's beautiful.
Accept everyone, and for anyone that's like given up, or anyone that's absolutely black-pilled, and I understand the reasons for that, but there is always an opportunity to transform things, because once again, ideas are bulletproof. So for anyone that has given up and is absolutely black-pilled, don't be reluctant to give the country and the people a second chance. I'm extremely optimistic of the people, whilst being extremely pessimistic of not all, but most politicians. I think we can learn, we can adapt, we can overcome. We can all have our own little triumphs in our lives. I think we can all carve out our own paths. I think every individual should allow yourself to be content. You don't have to give up with the Joneses. There's comfortability in being content and not wanting too much and being grateful for what you have. I think people are attempting to hold themselves to an impossible standard as well. I think that's false. To be a hamster on the wheel, people are trying to run red lights just to stay on time. Such is the pace of the modern world. But we don't need to be there. We're meant to be relaxed. We're meant to be chilled out. We're meant to be doing whatever we need to do, which keeps ourselves happy. We're all fallible, myself included, but that fallibility, that's not the end game, right? The true end game is forging an internal resilience to withstand some of these draconian measures that are placed against us, and being willing to step up to the plate and push back twice as hard.
And you just touched on something vitally important, and I talk about it a lot. And the ability to be relaxed, and what that translates to practically, is to not be put in a position where you feel reactive because of all of these distractions and pressures that pop up. So, I mean, an example would be my own fallibility, which is beginning this live stream in my feelings and periodically losing my shit because I'm angry. And I can be angry intermittently, right? But I will always bring it back down to a point of like feeling grounded and knowing, well, actually, I have a semblance of control over the decisions in my life, in the sense that I can choose to exit the chat and go live on a property somewhere and remove myself should I choose to get out of this situation. It's not life or death for me, in the sense that I'm in a position now where, you know, we've got heaps of people that are motivated to make change in the same way. And it's something I'm guilty of, but I try to remind people of, and it's just like, to stay in the moment. Don't think too far into the future. Think about who you're receiving information from. Think about the fact that these are also human beings. Don't put people on pedestals in your mind that they didn't earn, right? Like, these politicians don't deserve to live in your head as overarching figures. They deserve to be in the clown car. And just imagine them all in clown paint if you have to. Whatever it takes to bring them back down to your level in your mind, and you'll stop being afraid. And not being afraid is important because it's the tactic that they used through COVID. It's how they got people to be compliant. You know, creating instability and instilling fear in people and confusing them as well is the top way to ensure compliance, yeah? So if we remain grounded and focused and we're not afraid of them, if we can logically see what they're doing and actually have that faith that if we are broadly non-compliant and laugh in their faces, that they have no control, that's important. I don't think people accept that we have such an ability to create that outlook as being the majority. And people really don't realize it's not that far off, yeah? People already don't respect the people in government, but it's getting to the point now where we're becoming more informed and we could easily just stop taking anything they say seriously and then react to any overreach from a much stronger position because of that, right? So, like, I always bring it back to, like, please stop freaking out. Like, at least if you're going to be concerned, be concerned. I'm not saying don't act, not at all, quite the opposite. But you'll find that when you act from a place of confidence and feeling grounded and knowing what you are and aren't prepared to do is really important for that as well, that your ability to influence other Australians becomes magnified in that way because they can pick up on that, like, peaceful conviction, if you will. I don't know how else to sort of encapsulate it, but yeah.
I'll just say this then finally. So it's a resilient mindset, which you're talking about, Millie. It's a mindset that allows you to move forward in the face of adversity. Because we're all going to have to overcome challenges and hurdles in our lives, regardless if they're outside of what the government's doing to us or just in our own battles that we all have to deal with. But if you can remain resilient, if you can forge that steel in yourself, just like what Anthony has been able to do, it allows you to remain in control of your attitude, and you can keep it healthy, and you can make it positive. And therefore, if you're healthy and positive in your attitude, you can inspire others to also become the same way, and you can help lift them up when they're feeling down, which is very, very important, right? And I think most importantly, be grateful. Be grateful for what we have to this point, because we've all got a roof over our heads. We've all got smart devices. We've got internet. We've got running water. Some of us might have food in the fridge. Some of us, do have some options, and options are a luxury as well, right? So be grateful for what you have and be generous in every single instance that you can be. Be generous. And if you're ever afforded an opportunity to provide someone else an opportunity, if they're worthy of that opportunity, grant it. If they sink or swim, that's up to them. But never deny somebody an opportunity. Because so many people feel hopeless, they feel that there's no way forward. And sometimes all they need is just some encouragement. Sometimes all they need is an opportunity. And you'd be surprised as well, because many people who have been denied opportunities, once granted an opportunity, they take that ball and they run with it, and they do remarkable things with that. And I know this is true because, and if you don't mind, like, I'll just relay that little story from at CPAC earlier this year. So Ant rocked up, and we're at CPAC, g'day, how's it going, all this type of stuff, and catching up with a few people. Then before we knew about it, because he had to go and work out and do a few other things, such as his commitment to his sharp mind and a new attitude and a refreshed sort of
and broad frustration with the event, but yes.
Yeah, no, like I didn't want to throw them under the bus, but yes. So he had to go. But then before we knew about it, we ended up at a dinner after the event. And we were sitting at that dinner, and there were some remarkable people, some extremely influential people at that table. And Ant was sitting there, and before he knew about it, bang, a few of these people who I don't think he'd previously met, they were aware of who he was and they loved his story, and they were, oh my God, this dude's sitting amongst us. And ordinarily, these are people from a different stratosphere in livelihoods. So there wouldn't have been that opportunity, but he was one of them, and they were one in him immediately, and they adored him and they made him feel welcome because he'd endeared himself through his tireless efforts, which largely go unannounced. And then, so once that ended, we strolled on to somewhere, and the head honcho, the man himself, I don't have to name drop, but the man himself, the head honcho, the dude that does everything about it, he said, hey, let's go back, come up to my house. And I was just a handful of us there with a couple of another prominent individual, I don't have to name drop him, but Ant was there. And then these two guys who were decision makers and very well heeled, they listened to Ant, and Ant relayed his story, and now they're cheerleaders for him forever because he's a true believer and he suffered. He had to go through an imprisonment. And I do know, and I can assure you, my man, that, you're certainly welcome going forward in anything like that. And those people, if you ever reached out, they would assist you, man. They would assist you. You've solidified a bond with them. You've forged a relationship with them. And that's because of your tireless efforts, which you previously may have thought had gone unnoticed, but they have gone not unnoticed. And that's a great position for you to be in. And I think that's due recognition for all your hard work. And I think it's a reward for effort. And that should encourage and inspire other Australians to do similar things, because you never know who's out there. You never know who sees what you do and how they'll be appreciative and be able to assist you going forward and create opportunities for you.
And I think real recognizes real as well, you know what I mean? And all the things that you just spoke of, like, not to be like glazing you on live or anything, but you are a perfect encapsulation of somebody who tries to elevate everybody. And I saw that in you, like even in the way that you were sort of trying to team me up for interviews or whatever, like when you met me, right? And like me being more of like a background sort of character, like I was more reluctant to that, but not for any reasons of like shyness, but I appreciated the way that you saw that and was like, you were exploring the hesitation in a way of like, how can I encourage these young people? And that's a rare quality in the space, very rare quality. We're tall poppy syndrome galore, really. But in saying that, it's like Anthony said earlier, we don't tend to have difficulty being in any rooms, but I think it comes from a point of there's a sense of we don't put people on pedestals. And I think that people often in the upper echelons of these sort of organizations or whatever don't often put themselves on pedestals either. So it's like that recognition of being able to just be real people and have a conversation, because it's refreshing, because there's a bit of an echo chamber, as you would know.
And I'd be remiss of me to say I'm extremely grateful for being welcomed onto the program tonight as well. I watched it several times. I've had chats with our main man a few times on Spaces and a few other things. But yeah, dude, I loved coming onto the show tonight. It's a privilege to catch up with you as well, Millie. I may have just jumped in because you were the guest tonight as well, Millie, as a matter of fact. But aside from that, aside from that, no, I was, of course, time constraints have normally prevented me from doing so. I've just returned from America. I was over there for the election.
Yeah, I can tell by the garb. Like, hello.
I've got a lot. Can I? So let me check it out. No, I won't roll with that one.
I saw that. I'm like, fuck, we're getting cancelled.
I'll roll with this one first. So this is the original, like no one's got this one. This is the proper Mar-a-Lago styles, and people at LAX and lots of other places were looking at me really sideways. I know liberal women losing their minds when I was walking through wearing these caps. They're like, what the fuck are you doing here? Get out of here. Like they hated it. So that was all cool. And what's another bit of merch I got here? So from Mar-a-Lago and stuff as well. Got the original OG styles. But yeah, this is the Mac Daddy. The signed by the great man with the presidential seal and everything, the legit signed with the gold, like, oh no, sorry, the silver Sharpie and everything on it. So yeah,
Dude,
They'll go
put it in
straight
a
to the
safe
pool
or
room. Straight to the
something.
pool room.
Put
I'm
it in
sorry?
a safe or something. Like someone's gonna steal that.
Straight to the pool room. Well, I'm locked and loaded, and I clean my scope every day, so they can present themselves.
Damn.
Unfortunately, I'm no longer in Florida, so I can't stand my ground. But I think it would be justified if they came here with ill intentions.
Wow. No, it's been cool having you on because this took a very different turn, but a nice one because we've gone from like stress and chill and government bullshit and stress and chill to now we're just chill, have an open dialogue. And it's good to actually go through the process of calming myself down, like with help rather than like getting off the live stream and being like, oh, all right, where are my cats?
And she's not a cat lady in that sense, ladies and gentlemen. She just appreciates cats, which is totally cool. So how do I deal with this then? I think you just served up. How do I deal with my frustration and animosity against some of the trajectory that I would be reluctant, resistant to getting on board with? I go jet skiing. I twist the throttles on motorcycles, and if I have to ride at 300 to blast out this frustration, I'll do that when the cameras and the cops ain't watching. But aside from that, yeah, I'd encourage everyone, just keep doing what you're doing. Most importantly, never give up on yourself. Believe in the cause, believe in the people. We'll get there. We're a new generation. We're the new Australian generation. And we won't ever give up. We're not going to accept it. And that's the right place to be. That's our default mode, because slavery isn't in our future. And that means slavery of the mind, right? I'm not talking about necessarily physically, but slavery of the mind. The government has no right to determine the way we think. They do not own our thoughts. And if they attempt to do so, I'll let them know. Don't CCP me, mate. I'm not about it whatsoever. So yeah, thanks for allowing me to appear, and much appreciated. Great catching up with both of you, of course.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Final sentiments, thoughts, feelings, concerns?
Nah, thank you to everyone that's watching. Thanks for all of your contributions, and thanks to everyone that's been sharing everything that we've been posting all day, all week, all month. Gentle reminder, we've got until close of business now, today, tomorrow, whatever you want to call it, to make a submission. So pin post on my profile.
Yeah.
I'll pull it up.
I'll write a list of dot points of what we covered in the legislation. I'll drop that in the comment under the live stream. I might get Anthony to add it to the back end of the Australians Best Agenda website just for the template material, just so people have those concrete points about what's wrong with it. It's like I always say, when you're going up against legislation, it's very good to know what's in it because it adds so much more weight to what you're saying, and it adds confidence in you in terms of like formulating your arguments and your points, even if you're talking to other people, which, you know, at any given opportunity, we should be at least trying to reach out to other Australians to let them know what's going on. So I think we'll do that, and we'll just take it as it comes. We'll stay in the moment. We move, they move, but all in all, I think it's a good outcome to absolutely flog them within an inch of their lives in terms of the emails and the phone calls and the whatever and the messages and the socials and the comment section, whatever you can, news, comment sections, whatever you can be doing, please. It's like I said originally when we came out about this, every inch of you that is irritated by what these people do, use that irritation and annoy them back. Annoy them back from a point of strength and confidence and conviction. And we'll go from there. We'll see what happens.
When are you running for the Senate, Millie?
Nobody wants to pick me. I can tell you now. She's too radical. She's too radical.
It's all right.
I think Lydia's got you covered.
We're formulating different strategies to approach this. But until then, we're just going to keep on building, stacking up wins, and hopefully eventually we'll get there. Whatever approach, whichever way we have to take it, we'll figure it out. But yeah, pin post, everyone. Pin post, that's on Twitter. So there's what, 2,200 people allegedly watching. Pin post on the account. Click on it. I run through exactly what you have to do in this quick 4-minute tutorial, and the link to make a submission is just below it. All right. Only thing that everyone has to focus on for the next 18 hours is just make a submission. But if any dumb shit happens tomorrow, best believe I will be posting about it, because I'm always first to break the dumb shit news. That's it.
All right, good team.
Follow Australian Talks on Twitter. That's his account. He's a legend. He's a great networker, a great advocate for freedom of speech in Australia. And follow Millie Fontana as well. Millie vs. Government on Instagram. Don't worry about me. You'll find me somewhere. You'll find me in the trenches. That's it. Good night.
Good night, everyone.